everything you watch, read, or listen to is manipulating your energy. You're being lied to about the world you live in. You're being lied to about your history. You're being lied to about who you really are. Question everything.
I just got a text from Danny saying that he's going to be about 30 minutes late. When he gets in the car, he'll hop on and but yeah, he said he was having dinner with friends that he hasn't been with in a while, and I told
Dude,
him to share the
totally.
love and whatever. So
Yeah. Well, I had my little girl's birthday party today too, so, like, it's been and baseball practice and fantasy baseball draft and also all kinds of different things, so
well then it's a perfect way to put this all into perspective. And when I sent that to him, I said something to the effect of share and absorb your friend's love, and to picture him sitting there enjoying a Saturday with his family and friends is that's what this is all about. Everything, like the laser experience in DMT is such a secondary thing to, like you said, to spending your day with your family and doing that. So to kind of put it all into perspective, big picture stuff.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, when you start, getting down the path of conspiracy and spirituality and all this other stuff, that you always end up back where you started from, which was just, "Let me just enjoy life. Let me just enjoy this experience that I'm at now," you know?
And I don't want to put words into your mouth, but it seems the people that have that same sparkle in their eye and smile that you and I do, the sense of empathy and sympathy and understanding and love conveyed to your neighbor and to the other person, it just seems easy. And I mean, probably not the way that the podcast was going to start. A couple of now looking guys talking about DMT laser experiment, talking about love thy neighbor and all that. But that's to your point. Whatever kind of gets you to that switch of perspective, where it does it shifts the mundane bullshit material, external stuff, puts it in the proper perspective, and it allows you to look within and then receive the love of around the people around you, and not worry necessarily so much about some of the other shit, whether it's views or whatever.
Yeah.
So happy
I
to hear
just
you had a good day.
Yeah, same to you, man. I get to the point where I, stopped really getting deep into the stuff, and I just wanna present information for people and just let them think for themselves on it. I'm not trying to convince anybody one way or another. I do feel like some things are important, while you're waking up, and that's why I started the show. It's called the Awaken Podcast because I felt like there was a lot of information that I could share with people, and my initial goal was to have them wake up. Like, I wanted to wake people up, but I realized that as I was shaking them to wake up, that you can't wake someone who is asleep like that. They have to come to it on their own, you know? And so
Well,
I'm
that
just here to provide information for them. That's all.
and it's a delicate balance that I find myself talking about, whether it be topics, whether it be awakened or a perspective shift or the power of psychedelics, where we can't necessarily jam these things down people's throat, because a part of my awakening and part of my, and however you want to term it, a complete shift of perspective on my life is that I appreciate that it's going to be a different, everybody's on their own path and their own time in that journey. And I had my kind of midlife crisis and my whatever at 40 plus years old. So I certainly give the benefit of the doubt to the young men and women in their 20s and 30s that haven't figured it out, because, hell, I took that long. And maybe more, um, or as just, as another example, I was watching a podcast the other day where a woman in her, I don't know her exact age, but she looked like maybe late 50s, 60s, was talking about how at that point in her life, she just kind of put her foot down and said, enough, like, whatever. I want to find God. I want to find that creator or that greater source. Once again, whatever religious kind of bend you want to go on, but just kind of demanded a break from the bullshit, a break from that just societal driven rat race, and it can happen at any time. So I think the beauty of your show and the aspects of what you're bringing to it, hopefully my message of mental health and psychedelics is that if the right person hears it at the right time, and if I may, just on an asterisk, maybe he's even listening. I got a close friend, Chris Fiato, who, he's a musician. He writes poetry. He's thinking about writing a book, and he questions himself often about, is my voice worthy to be shared? And I don't have a huge audience, and is it even worth putting it out there? And I sent him a heartfelt text saying, "Man, like you are the exact person that can share your story exactly how you need to share it. And for the people that it doesn't resonate with or don't need to hear it, that's fine. But maybe there'll be a handful, or hopefully in our case, whatever, a good chunk of people that our story can resonate with. So,
Eh,
that's why I keep doing it, and that's why I appreciate your content. Once again, that last show with Lisa Smart, fucking awesome episode, man. That was great.
thank you, man. I really appreciate that. It's so weird to me to hear that too because, when you do this kind of stuff, it's like you don't really feel like you're saying anything or doing anything that's like important. But then I realized that when we speak words, there's these every letter has a little vortex that comes out of our mouths. And each little vortex has a torus around it, a little magnetic field around it. And so when we speak, our words are vibrating at a certain resonant frequency when they come out of our mouths. And I feel like that authenticity that we talked about last time on the show, which by the way, everybody loved the show, got a lot of good, great feedback. It was
Thanks.
very well received and downloads were great on it, man. So thank you for joining me for the last show as well. Um, but those words when they come out of our mouths, and I was even as you were just talking like that, I was just thinking like, do I belong in this conversation? Because but and then you just as I was thinking that, you said that, and it was just perfect timing because yeah, I just feel like I have something to say. And that authenticity will resonate when you speak those letters out. Because I don't understand it when people follow my show or like my show or whatever. I really and truthfully don't. I'm not just saying that. But I am starting to realize that it's the authenticity that comes out of your voice that matters the most. It's not about the ums and the ahs and the screw ups that
Right.
you've got on the show. It's
And
about
and
the resonant frequency that's coming out.
and know that that resonant frequency can ripple beyond just the views or the clicks or the likes. Like, so this once again, your last episode that I watched, afterwards I went up and spoke with both my parents. So, they're watching TV, just doing their normal routine. And I said, "Hey, listen, I was just watching an episode with a guy that I'm going on, and listen to this. It's a lady who's taking stories of people at end of life, and how important and how interesting. And, the TV got shut off. We had a 10-minute conversation, and it brought up a topic that wouldn't have been brought up. And not that I'm necessarily trying to, like, back to what we said earlier, push my life and my experiences down my parents' throat, because at their age and in their point of life, they're in a completely different spot. But I would like to maybe open their eyes that there is something greater than that. There is something beyond their normal five senses. That, as they're nearing end of life, they're only 70, but as they're getting closer towards that, to have a better understanding of a lot of these topics that I think are important to breach. And I don't think they're interested in necessarily doing DMT or doing shrooms, but I think they would be interested in listening or reading that book of that woman, or countless other stories that are out there. So I think it's really important. And if I could add to your point about, are you worthy, or should you be in this conversation with Danny and I, and if he does show up, the answer is yes, because it's, am I the DMT laser guy that found it? No. And if I act like that, people are going to call bullshit and say, you're not that guy. And that's why I'd like him to be here to speak for himself. What I can do is add a unique perspective to his experiment through my own bullshit filter, through my own whatever, and speak truly and heartfully to you and to him, and to if anybody has any questions. But then maybe, and if you try to act like you're the DMT guy or the laser guy, then you're going to come off looking unauthentic. So, but I think what you're trying to do is help share the information like we just discussed, whether it be with veterans or with people with mental health issues, or with people trying to have that awakening like we discuss, through multiple different avenues. And I think maybe once again, if you may introduce this topic to somebody, I'm pretty comfortable that most people that watch your video on your show are going to be pretty comfortable with Danny and I's work, where maybe we can be introduced to new people on your show because this is a topic that maybe your listeners aren't so honed in on. So, it's important that you're helping us bring that message. So it's really, I appreciate the opportunity to come back on your show, um, to share with your audience, whoever that may be. So
And thank you for coming back. Do you ever feel like you're not authentic or inauthentic to who you are? You ever feel like it's an act? That I'm not saying that you are acting. I'm just asking a question as in, like, sometimes I'm nice and then I'm like, am I doing that for my own benefit or am I doing that for other people's benefit?
I was fake as fuck before 41 years old, and I say that um, just because I would try to manipulate people, or I would try to do a power move on them, or and I mentioned this on our last interview, how I was a drunken, narcissistic, belligerent asshole, dick, blah blah blah. Like so, yeah, I was in a space way different than where I am now. Now, I'm almost authentic to to a fault, which is why when somebody stole that $900 from me, I threatened to kill him and have no room for anybody doing that to me, or the fact that my relationships now are so um intimately beautiful and open with communication because I'm comfortable speaking my own skin. Or even now, as I look to figure out what my new career path is and where I'm going to go with my next stages in life, uh, it's so easy to walk authentic and raw and true and not worry about what comes out of your mouth because you never have to worry about being caught up in a lie or saying anything untrue. And it's become a very, very easy lifestyle. It's offensive to some people. Some people don't want to hear that truth, whether about society or even themselves necessarily. But yeah, I won't sugarcoat anything for anybody. That being said, I'm also sensitive where I never want to hurt anybody's feelings. I would never make somebody feel as though their voice shouldn't be heard. And I know that my crazy life with all the fucked up shit that I've been through is not going to be understood or necessarily agreed upon by everybody. And I got to give them that space. And I do. So I find myself not really ever having to push my story because whatever. I just find myself in a place where I'm always comfortable to relay it.
I find like we I find that when we're our true selves, it's hard to be around people because it's a lonely place sometimes, right? It's like when you're around a bunch of other people who can't be themselves, they don't like you almost. Do you ever get that as well? Do you ever experience like you must be fake because this is you can't be that nice or that authentic or you can't be that real about something.
Yes and no. And I was actually just commenting on this the other day. You'd think that that would lead to a lonely path, kind of lone wolf lifestyle. And I think it's almost just like you separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And those people that the truth is too tough for them, yeah, they'll clearly get out of your way. But the group of people that it does resonate with, like you even saying, do you feel comfortable reaching out with Danny? I felt very comfortable after speaking with him for 2 hours on his show, and then some subsequent conversations that, um, yeah, we were aligned and we were on the same page because of the experiences we've been through, and partly because we answer to that DMT space or the the gods or entities in that DMT realm where there is no space for bullshit, there is no room for lying, there is no room for that, and I can see it in his eyes that his words go through that same filter that I do. And, same thing with now, shit, I've been on 40 podcasts now with some really cool people. And you can sense when, whether it be through trauma or through some sort, whatever it is that got them to that point of having the same conversations that you and I are having, you can tell pretty clearly, if they're authentic or not, and if they're coming from the heart. And those are the people that are easy to resonate with and collaborate with and talk with. I mean, maybe you and I are a perfect example. Every time we interact with one another, it's easy and natural and authentic because what the fuck? Why would you have it any other way? And I would call bullshit, and so would you. So, yeah, I find that actually very liberating and very enriching. Where it's almost like you you demand how worthy you are of your own space and energy, not only coming from you and projecting it, but also what you let around you and your family. And yeah, if anything,
It's very
it's
fr
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I keep
No, I was just
interrupting you.
mumbling at the end there.
No, I was gonna say that it's very frustrating when you really are truly being, like, a kind person or something, And maybe like my wife, we talked about this last time. It's hard to deal with sometimes because my wife doesn't understand me and I don't understand her sometimes. She really thinks that maybe I have this nefarious agenda with something I'm doing. And I'm like, no, I'm just doing it because I care. You know, oh, you must want this or you must want that. No, no, I really do care, and I try to be my authentic self all the time, like, even on the show, but it's hard to do too because there's this thing in the back of your mind where you're like, "Oh, I'm on a show. I'm trying to host something. I'm trying to be professional." So there is almost this filter or something that I had that kinda slows me down from being my true self because if it's really my true self, if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm going 1,000 miles an hour, blah, 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 you know what I mean? And, but that's me too, but I have to scale it back because we're on a show and you're the guest. It's not just me running my mouth. So I have to let you speak because I have to slow myself back, pull myself back a little bit, but we can still get the same, message across without me talking so much. So
Well, I'm glad you, have somebody like that that can give you constructive criticism and feedback. And that's another, even with whether it be my writing, my message, I recently started a YouTube channel just literally a couple weeks ago where I'm putting stuff out there, and I've gotten some criticism and feedback, but I feel like it's all been from an authentic, true place, and, I'd rather have that. Now, if somebody's being nasty, and that's actually why, one of the comments, I made a short video about the DMT laser experiment, and there was a comment recently being like, um, that's just the lint in your eyeballs that you're seeing, and like just normal movement in the laser. And so I didn't even respond back because it's so easy. It's clearly he's never done DMT, or she, and clearly they haven't seen the code in the laser, or maybe they've done DMT but haven't seen the code in the laser, which is a possibility as well. It takes some practice to actually see it, but it's why even engage with somebody like that, where you almost just like you are they trolling? Are they just trying to get a get you to have some sort of response that's going to make you look like a fool or go down to their level? And it's almost like, yeah, just whatever. Let it let it just pass on, and then engage with the people that really wanna talk about it. And that's why, maybe we can start weaning into the DMT laser
yeah,
experiment.
yeah,
That's why I really wanted to bring my take to it, because there is a lot of marketing and promoting, and there's a lot going on where there's a lot of sensational stories about the experiment. Honestly, even his website, The Code of Reality, the movie that's going to be made, his interactions with some pretty famous people on some pretty big shows has gotten a lot of attention. And um, I just wanted to add my perspective and my take on it. And I reached out to him actually, and just kind of shared some of my DMT experiences and stories. And he invited me onto his show, which I guess, if we are talking about the laser experiment, his name is Danny Gola. He is the guy that found it all. He's got his website is codeofreality.com. So I'd say if anybody's interested in the how the story started, when he first saw it, the specs of the laser, how do you get the laser. He goes over, how you can either build it yourself or he'll ship you one out. He has some interviews as well, and then he also, his podcast that I mentioned I was on is called Dan Go Thoughts, and he's got some really good interviews on that as well. So I'd say if anybody's interested in getting really like I said, the full story, I would recommend going to his stuff. But excuse me, I wanted to share my perspective on his show once again, to bring the mental health aspect to DMT, but then also to take some of the maybe not necessarily sensational aspect of it away, but more just anytime you're messing with DMT, like this isn't something that you can be messing around with willy nilly. And oh yeah, I want to see this code in the reality, so I'm going to use DMT, or even have this be a prompt for you to start using DMT, because and I mentioned this in the video that I do, that DMT is going to overpower the experience like a millionfold. The laser is you really have to put DMT at the forefront of it. And yes, there's some aspects to how much you dose, and do you microdose it, and do you use a vape pen as opposed to blasting the crystals, and do you do one hit as opposed to five, and how long afterwards do you smoke, do you actually look at the laser? And these are all things, excuse me, that I'd like to talk to Danny about, as far as the data points that he's gotten from what he's collected. But My first kinda take into it was, "All right, I'm gonna, set everything up," and everything was good, and I always have this routine of kinda respect, reverence, prayer. What is my intention going into each session? And not to necessarily say that I rushed it or was just kinda demanding like, "All right, well, I'm gonna see this laser. I'm the DMT guy, and I wanna write about it and talk about it, so here it is." And that first time that I tried to look at the laser, I got blasted off into that DMT space and realm, and I just kinda needed to sit back and have that session go through. There was really no way that I was gonna sit there and look at the laser, and it kinda smacked me back to reality to be like, "Listen, this experiment needs to be done with, like I said, the proper precaution." And this is somebody that's done DMT hundreds and hundreds of times, and that's why I wanted to bring that perspective where if there's anybody that feels comfortable with their mind and body being in that vibratory realm of DMT, it is certainly I. But, um, I mentioned it's really important still to set the environment and the intention. So set up the laser, but still you want to make sure you have your pillows and your blankets and your glass of water and, have kind of still make sure you're not in a strictly experimental data collection type mentality because I don't think that's the right way to approach this. I know when I had the best results and that when I was able to really kind of zone right into it and actually see the laser, um, see the actual code, it was laying comfortably with my head properly suspended on a pillow with the laser actually only, a couple inches off the ground where I wasn't sitting propped up in an uncomfortable chair with a bunch of lights on me being recorded by a camera. And I don't think, like I said, if that's what you're trying to do, I don't think the results will get there. Because it is a part combination of elevated and heightened senses through the DMT, but also kind of getting into a deep meditative trance where you can zone in on it and see through it. And that's where he discusses the kind of analogy of looking through those magic eye books from back in the day, where it was all kind of squiggly on the pages, but once you look through it, that 3D image would pop out, and it is very similar to that, where you have to kind of look through it and see beyond it in order to actually see the layers. And then actually, the other night, me and my girlfriend were kind of doing an experiment, and we were using the analogy of if you've ever looked under a microscope, and as you're trying to zoom in and get that perfect level of clarity and crispness of image, you kind of have to go through different layers of vision, and that's really what you have to do in this laser because you have to pull between the layers to actually see it. It's a like I said, it's something that you need to practice. But again, once you see it, I can see why he and the people that have are kind of saying, "What the fuck? What is this? And what does this mean?" And I don't think anybody says they have the answer to those questions. It's more just let's try to get some data and information on this.
I want to reset just a little bit. For those who are listening, this is Adam Butler, and he is the author of the book and the host of the show on YouTube called Butler's DMT Field Guide. And he's joining. I saw a video of Adam on Instagram where he was talking about the experience. And for those who don't know, the DMT laser experience has kind of been going viral around YouTube. I would say. I mean, it's being talked about on big shows like Rogan and some other shows. Like I said, Adam has done this experiment, and I am fascinated with this because I'm fascinated with the idea of a holographic reality that we live in. I think that it's becoming more evident to me as I go through my life and weird things happen where it feels like I'm the cartographer of this reality, as if like I'm creating this world as I go through this world. Because there are street signs in my town that I live in, for example, which are names of people that were in my life when I was younger. And so for me, it feels like this, like all
Truman
these
Show type shit.
yeah, yeah, there's like these pieces all over the place that I'm kinda like, they're still in my life somehow. Like it'll be somebody's name, the name of the road, like I said, or, as I'm driving down the road, like I'm listening to a song, like I'm a big Chevelle fan, and I was listening to Chevelle, and as I was listening, I was really like feeling this music. And as I'm feeling this music, it felt like the billboards were coming alive around me, right? As I mean, literally the lyrics to the song was every billboard was the next it was the vision I was having in my mind of the song was the next billboard and then the next billboard. And then I finally kinda was like, "Oh, man," I kinda snapped to and realized that, I "Am I doing this? Like, what's going on here?" Kinda
Ah,
got out of that mode. It was kinda
no,
weird.
I love it, and you're giving me goosebumps because it there's when you once you're tapped into the synchronicities like that, and you really start having those days that are full, and, I mentioned part of my story was spending a year on the road and just traveling, so I've had exactly that moment for months and months on a time where you're just in the road, you're set in, and whether it be the lyrics, matching, like you said, the billboards, or you'll hear a song and they'll talk about a train, and then instantly you'll drive and you'll hear the train whistle, or um, I left one where I mean, talk about a crazy synchronicity. So I left Kansas City, Missouri, which is one of the cities I went to all the time, and there's a rapper there called Mac Lethal, and he's got a song that's called Black Widow, and it's about a woman. It has to do with Black Widow, has to do with the Power and Light District in Kansas City, Missouri, which is this very specific area that I had just left. I had just gotten a Black Widow tattoo on the back of my neck. I've got this huge gnarly one hit. And it literally was there was like 4 or 5 aspects of this song as I was just leaving away from the city that I'd never heard before. And and that just continued. I mean, like I said, for almo a year I was on the road, but it does make you think where, yeah, what's the mathematical probability of some of these things? And uh, yeah, I've had so many of those where one of them, and if I could, just a kind of cool one that ties, what we're expanding here. I recently went to the Monroe Institute, so I did that Gateway Voyage program. So I deep meditation for a week. It was an amazing process. But I was just talking about making DMT with somebody, and how the plant that most likely is used or that's used commonly is Mimosa hostilis. And literally after that conversation, I took a walk from campus, walked up the hill, and I'm thinking about the paper that I'm going to be writing about basically the crossroads of DMT and the Monroe Institute. And I'm walking up like Robert Monroe Mountain Road, and then the crossroad that I crossed was Mimosa Lane. And I have a picture of that in my, in the article that I wrote. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, what is the probability of that? 10 minutes after it, and here we are thinking, and and that, and that's that funky, not funky, but that makes you question everything. Is this once again a holographic reality? Are we manifesting and creating, our thoughts creating some tangible whatever? Even, and you can maybe apply that to this laser experiment. Like,
Right.
are we just creating this laser code in our minds? And I don't know. Uh, but that's why I wanted to share what I saw, and
Sure.
distinguish it from what maybe some of the naysayers may say, because I approach everything with a kinda scientific bent, and I try to really be, put it through the scrutiny, and I have no problem changing my perspective. I'm not set on any outcome in anything in my life, and, so that's why I wanna set some things straight when people are just either calling DMT bullshit, the laser experience bullshit, or what we're seeing is bullshit, because it's just no one's saying what it is, but to say that it's not there, or that DMT somehow doesn't allow you to have these heightened experiences, those 2 things are bullshit statements, 'cause both are true.
I think we exist in a state of superposition all the time, and I'm not trying to take it to a physics or metaphysics or anything like that kind of, I mean, I guess this is a metaphysics conversation, but, I'm not gonna try to take it to a physics conversation, but I think we exist in this, superposition type state, and that you just said it a while ago, you're not really pointed at any direction, you're just going with the flow of life, and I think that's when all the magic happens. That's whenever you unlock this ability to create that world, because you're living in this energy that exists around you, and you're just like, okay, take me where I need to go. And that's what happens with shows a lot of times. I mean, I didn't plan, like, I have a list of people I want to talk to. You wasn't on that list, but then I saw that clip and I was like, I got to talk to this guy, like, we got to talk about this, right? And I go with that now. I go with every moment of every life. I exist in the now, because, when you exist in the now, you're existing in all of those things at the same time, and you will automatically kinda go towards the direction that you're supposed to go. That's sorta how I see it. And if you continue to live in that space, then those synchronicities and stuff that we're talking about happen all the time. Like, they never end, like, they're always going on, and that's the stuff that makes me question reality. Like I said in this, that was exactly why I wanted to have you on the show, and when you said Danny, I was like, "Perfect, we can talk to Danny as well about this," because, like, I feel like there's more to us than what we're being told about, you know? We're these creators, these magical creators, or the cartographers, like I just said, of our realities. We can create anything and everything. And I do feel like there are things or entities or something holding us back. I won't stay in the negative side of that because I think we can get lost in that. But I do feel like we have this ability to do all of this, to go anywhere, to be, but again, when you experience something and it's improbable, like some of the things you just mentioned a while ago, like I was reading something about the Gulf of Tonkin the other day, and every name that was popping up in the Gulf of Tonkin were like family members, and they were like names that you that aren't normal names. And I've done shows before where somebody has said a name on my show, like a last name, and then I've had a friend of mine go, "Hey, wait a minute, I use a pseudonym. That's actually my last name. That name nobody knows in this whole world." But, those synchronicities continue to happen, and I think, you give off this positive energy or this energy, and those kinds of things just start attracting in your life. But I didn't mean to detract from it. I just wanna kinda set the scene for how I think about reality. And when I see stuff like when you guys are looking into lasers and seeing code, to me, it makes sense, man, because there have been times where reality weirds me out sometimes. And there was a time when I first started waking up, I lived under this we were building our house, and me and my wife lived under, like, a power substation, and there was a lot of heavy electricity coming off this power substation. And, basically, we were arguing all the time, and there was a reality became very weird to me. And I went to a birthday party with a friend of mine who, well, actually, it was my brother's birthday party, but my friend from that was in my wedding was there, and we were talking about a near death experience. And as we were talking about it he started crying because he was like, "Nobody's ever asked me those kind of questions. Like, nobody knows about those things. Like, how did you know about that?" And I was like, "Well, I read a lot about it. I study a lot about this kind of stuff." And anyways, as we were having this conversation, he tried to change the subject because he's a jokey kind of guy. He plays a lot of practical jokes and stuff. And he grabbed this big spoon and he reached the spoon towards me, and it was like this 3D motion where it looked like it weirded me out. It almost felt like it snapped me into a brief moment. It's like I don't want whatever that was. I don't want to see that
A
because it
glitch in the matrix.
yeah, it was weird, man.
Yeah.
It was weird, and those kind of things happen all the time where it feels like people are put in your life, like you're going through Walmart or something. I've talked about this before where it felt like everybody in Walmart was there for me somehow, and I don't really understand. I don't know how to explain that, but it felt like, and I remember walking by some. Now I don't think I'm special in any way. I think you and I can agree we're not special people, but like
But we
when
are
you
divine and we are connected and we are, yeah. So
there's
just
something
distinction.
interesting. But I was walking by this tax table. This guy was doing his taxes, and he, like, slowly looked at me. Do you remember that scene in, like, Inception where Leonardo DiCaprio is telling, Elliot Page or whatever her name is now, that, "Don't look," or whatever, and then she looks and everybody just turns their head? That's kinda what it felt like. It felt like somebody just this guy, like, turned and looked at me like he noticed that I was noticing him notice me or something like that. It was
Like
kinda
They
weird.
Live, that movie back in the old
Yeah,
movie
yeah.
They Live.
That's right, yeah. So anyways, again, this kinda sets the scene for how I see reality is it's a very weird place. Like, I realize it's a weird place. I look at my kids sometimes and I go, "This is" it's like, I know I won't ever experience this again. I'm realizing this now. Like, this is a unique experience, and I'm here for something, and it's almost like I'm starting to remember a little bit of who we are, what we're here for, and, again, that just sort of sets the reality the landscape or whatever you wanna say for how I view this world, which is, very I think we're in a weird place. So
No, I'm in alignment with that, and if I could add to it, I think you're able to tap into the synchronicities and maybe see some of the weirdness because of exactly what you just said about kind of being here and in the now. And I would say, the summary of my book and the summary of our last episode was my life-saving epiphany that I had, on that day that I really blasted off on DMT was just that. Don't be so stressed about the past. Don't be so worried and anxious about the future. Just be here in this right now, this millisecond, and the empowerment of that, of me taking that back, is really what then allowed my antenna to connect with exactly what you're talking about. Uh, so a lot of the concepts that we talk about, well, whether it be spiritual enlightenment or blasting away all the plaque and all that, it's all really basic stuff, and that's probably one of the most basic is just to be present. Because honestly, if those that beautiful moment that you were saying about driving down with the billboards kind of synchronizing with the music, if you were worried about the taxes or the bills, about cleaning your house or about not making enough money or fighting with your wife, or then you're gonna miss all of those. And there are so many people that's how they're driving. Or once again, better metaphor for life. That's their life with just the blinders on whatever direction, and then not picking up it. Where I think you and I now have those blinders off, and we're just kind of sitting there resonating, waiting for things to you know to happen. So
Why do you think that everyone else can't feel that or experience that? Why is it like we said earlier, it's different for everybody, but why do you think it's different for everybody?
I use the analogy, honestly, of I think there's such societal plaque that gets built up on all of us, and I just got a text from Danny saying he's gonna be hopping on soon, so maybe a perfect way to segue. I think our human antenna, our beautiful soul, our spirit, just gets bogged down with so much shit. Maybe once again, some of the past, some of the future, and we're just not able to express ourselves, but we're also not able to receive the vibrational energy and connection and love and all of that. And once that gets blasted off, whether it be through a psychedelic experience, a connection with God, a traumatic event, any of those things, um, I think you're able to really tune in to a universal energy and a universal vibration. And if I could now, maybe start talking about how DMT allows
Yeah, sorry to keep
what
taking
we're
you off
getting
track.
into. Well, no,
Sorry.
because no, because it's important because this is the stuff that you have to lay the groundwork to have the respect and reverence of the molecule and what you're doing with it, and why, and what are the existential and ontological questions on why are we doing this laser experiment? Why are you questioning it? And the big picture is because we're trying to answer some of these. What is the next step of human evolution? Why are we here? What's our connection to everybody else? So no, I believe me, if anything, I appreciate your tangents on this subject because I don't think they're necessarily tangents. I think they're paramount to what this study is about, who we are as individuals, why we're seeking all of those. So no, believe me, I appreciate you adding to that because that's honestly the kind of perspective that I wanted to share with this because that's why I'm doing it. I have no affiliation with Danny. I'm not connected with him, but I'm doing it because I want to explore consciousness. I want to see what's really out there, and whether it be going to the Monroe Institute and doing the hemisync technology, or whether it be trying to look into a laser. But I think what DMT does in general, so big picture, whether, once again, tie it back to mental health and all of that, but now bringing it back to the laser, uh, I think it allows you as a human to shed that plaque and then allow you to enrich and enhance your human antenna. So, enhance your consciousness, or how your ability to receive that external consciousness and the energy that's out there. So I think that's one of the things that DMT does allow. So, and can you maybe see the laser without DMT? I think yes. Can some people see it just because they're already connected and heightened? I'm pretty sure of it. Could there be even some, autistic people or some people that are heightened in other ways? Maybe deaf people that can see better. And that's where I think the research needs to go. Is are there ways of seeing this code without just smoking DMT? And I think that is going to happen and pan out over time. But the ability to just as a human connect, be comfortable, get into that vibratory state where you're able to receive that ethereal outside information that you're normally not, I think is one of the steps and processes that allows you to see this code in laser. Um, but I guess so for me, when I approached it, I was skeptical because if anybody's ever looked at, and actually I've got one of his latest lasers right here. So this is it. Literally, it's a tiny little plugs into a USB port. Um, I won't shine it into the camera, but it's really just a whatever small piece here. Um, but if anybody's ever looked at a laser, you can see moving stuff. Like the laser naturally has swirly movement in it. I mean, it's a dynamic thing. So, all right. So if anybody were to walk into a room and just look at that, you would see swirling shit from 10 feet away, from 2 feet away, that there's really some, like I said, dynamic movement within the laser. That is not the code. And, that's where, and you're not looking at the surface where that movement is. You're looking, like if you're looking at that post there, you're really trying to look, and you are. It almost seems like several feet beyond that. And that's where you really need that specific laser. And you can see how thick that band is, because it's not a pinpoint laser, and it's not a thin, like if you were to go to Home Depot and get a measuring laser, those have a really thin aspect, where these lasers have that diffusion, or that piece on it that spreads it out. So you're looking through that opening that laser creates, and you're actually, what's up, brother?
How you doing, brother? Sorry for being so late.
No,
Okay.
we were just talking about life and love and connection. We're just getting into the laser.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, he told me you were coming. Danny, thank you for joining us, buddy.
Absolutely. I apologize for I miscalculated with really good friends. Actually,
No.
we're still here, and I was like, guys, I have a podcast. I got to be honest. So
No,
Adam,
man, you're okay.
here's my laptop. Go ahead, go to my studio and just record the thing. So thank you.
You can go back anytime you want. What's more important is being with family and friends, man. And I've tried to scale back that. That's actually why I'm doing it on Saturday night, is because I was doing it Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night, and I just realized that maybe I should scale this back a little bit and start spending more time with my family. So,
Where do you live, by the way, in the States?
yes, sir. I live in South Carolina. How about you?
Oh, cool. We just moved to Nashville for a little while.
Are you from the United States?
No,
Or?
we no, I was born in Russia. I mean, I've been here for the last almost 20 years, but we lived in Pasadena for a long time, and we just moved to Nashville, in Tennessee.
It's a great place, man.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
place to be.
it's really wonderful.
Now, where'd you say you were out of, Adam?
I'm in Rhode Island,
Oh, Rhode
hence my
Island.
beautiful accent.
For some reason, I was thinking Ohio. I don't know why. It just seemed like an Ohio guy. But yeah, you do have uh, Northeast accent for sure.
Let's
um,
see if we can make this work. You can hear me fine, right?
yes, sir. Yeah.
Perfect.
So for those who are listening, this is Danny Goler. He's the host of the Dan Go Thoughts podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and is the creator of the Discovery, the very popular, wildly viral YouTube video called The Discovery, which is about a DMT laser experiment.
I remember things very vividly from a very young age. When I was a little kid, I actually spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandfather was a nuclear physicist. I remember he was telling me about black holes, and that terrified me.
I was like, that's just mind-boggling. It's a monster, right?
But at the same time, it fascinated me. And I said to myself, how do we know that? This unthinkably massive thing. I realized that nature doesn't keep secrets. It's only a matter of, do we understand? What tools can we use to expand our knowledge? And for me, dimethyltryptamine, also known as DMT, was the tool that led me to the discovery.
When I first saw the phenomenon, I was like, holy shit!
But then it was actually like, whoa, what is happening?
Am I losing my mind? But then I showed other people, and things kept getting weirder.
Just for the record, I haven't told him anything. Okay, just tell me what you see.
Oh my God, come on.
Wow, what the fuck? Holy shit. I just saw something. Yeah. What the fuck?
Oh, I see that. I feel it.
I've been under the influence of mind-altering substances a lot, but I've never seen anything like that. Whoa.
I showed over 100 people, and I kept asking myself, how are all of us seeing the same thing?
Oh my God. It's changing shapes right there.
The laser was revealing numbers and letters running in a pattern.
They're almost like this big here, and it looks like code.
It looked like programming code.
It's definitely saying something, and I just want to take a picture of it and translate it.
Wow.
You see that?
Okay, so yeah, it's not stuck.
No.
It's not because of the light.
No, it's on its own side. Light is just literally revealing it.
And each angle shows you different layers, different ways through it.
I could see through the wall. It's not like a hallucination. It has spatial awareness and permanence.
I don't know. Whoa.
For centuries, mankind has attempted to explore these psychedelic, altered states, but we've never had a repeatable, testable phenomenon to observe until now.
I'm obsessed.
It's like you can see through the laser into another dimension.
I mean, like, take yourself to that. Like, I just made a connection that nobody made before, which is a simple connection. The claim is, if you project a diffracted laser on the surface and you smoke DMT, you will see code running in surfaces. Yes, like in the Matrix.
So there are a few possibilities. One,
I lost my mind, which is the coolest losing your mind ever in history.
the second option is that
This is the biggest discovery of humankind. If anybody ever asked themselves what it would be like to know you live in the Matrix for sure, well, I know for sure. I'm convinced.
So where do we go from here? All I know is
It's about to get crazy.
And dude, I've heard you on your name has been mentioned on all kinds of different shows. I believe it was mentioned on Rogan. Am I wrong about that?
Actually, funny enough, it was, and I literally just got sent a clip as I was pulling up to Adam's place, by a friend. Joe just spoke about it with like Eddie Bravo brought it up, and they were talking about it like some more, because Eddie, I met Eddie. I know one of his black belts really well, Brian McCagran, and I actually sat down with Eddie one time and gave him the whole spiel almost a year ago. So he was mentioning it, and they kind of really talked about it. So that was a serious Joe Rogan bump. Yeah.
Yeah, which means I'm sure you'll be going on the show at some point for sure.
Hopefully soon, yeah.
Congratulations. Well, just to be mentioned is awesome, man. I mean, and Eddie's a true. He's really down like that. I mean, he always drops people in there for Joe because they've been friends for a long time, and you can see him like plant little seeds and stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah. No, Eddie is a wild man, brother.
yeah,
It's a wild dude.
he seems like I don't know him, personally or anything, but he
Yeah.
definitely seems like it.
He
So.
gave me. We sit down at TGI Fridays. We were at the same event, and it just happened to be there the second time we sat down. I gave him some of the spiel, and then he gave me the full space is fake spiel for 2 hours. It was great. So I know all about how space is fake.
Well, I was telling Adam, sometimes I don't feel like I'm qualified for the conversation, and tonight it will probably be one of those because you guys are way smarter than I could ever be about some of this stuff, and you guys have experienced a lot of this DMT stuff, man. So this is a completely foreign place to me, but I am incredibly interested in it, just because I think that there are so many benefits to psychedelics that, for whatever reason, it's been held back from us. I mean, a few years back, 5-6 years ago, I remember. I do some work I do contract work for web design and photography and stuff like that. And a big client of mine is out of Arkansas, and they have a bunch of hospitals, and they were talking about how do we handle the crisis of the drug crisis or the opioid crisis, and I said, "Hey, well, has anybody ever thought about psychedelics?" And you would have thought that, you would have thought I just peed on the table or something. Everybody was like, what are you talking about?" And it was a bunch of, older folks that were like, 60s, 70s. They were like board member type people, and they just completely ignored the idea. But I don't think you can ignore it anymore, right, Adam? I mean, I think that it's a clearly a benefit for people's health. I mean, people who have PTSD have taken, what's it called, ibogaine, I believe, to um, cure their mental illnesses. People have done ketamine to get off of heroin addiction and things like. I mean, instantly too. It's not like it's a long process where you got to do many trips. It usually is like right away. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think the benefits and the data points showing that, whether it be MDMA with couple therapy, shrooms with, soldiers, Mike talks about ayahuasca and DMT. I don't think there's any question now that there's incredible benefit for mental health and therapeutic value with psychedelics. But then, uh, the next step, and then expansion of thought, expansion of where that takes us beyond that, which is, I think, exciting, where Danny's experiment comes in, because and I'm the first to talk about, and that's what I rant about, is the mental health aspect about psychedelics. But I love the next step, which is what's the exploration about some of the benefits? How can we expand what's been, what's accessible to us? And that's why I love exploring with DMT, and then particularly, once again, what we can find through this exploration of this. And
By the way, can you guys hear me okay now through the mic, or is that okay?
Yeah, it's
As long
great,
as it
great.
okay, great. Sorry, continue.
No, and then just to keep you up to speed as far as what we talked about the laser, really we spent a time talking about life and love and connection and all that, but then talking about, really, I put DMT at the forefront of the experiment, that you still need to really give it the respect, the reverence, set your intention, set the environment. It's not something to be played with and joked with, and you really need to put DMT, I think, at the front, to make sure you're not getting overwhelmed, or kind of blasted off into a place. But then we really haven't talked about my experience getting into it the first couple of time, or really even setting up any of the procedure or protocol. So yeah, we're really just starting fresh. If you wanted to, maybe whatever.
First of all, I would say that there's definitely a lot of promises coming from psychedelics in all kinds of ways, just like you guys just mentioned, with ketamine, with ibogaine, with psilocybin, with addictions. And to be quite honest, I don't until hearing stories like yours, Adam. Just from my own personal experience, I don't know if I would categorize DMT as one of these, like, I know that it can help you kind of substances. It definitely helped you, and I'm tremendously grateful that people like you exist that can also articulate that well. But the thing that with DMT is that it's extremely short lived, and it's very intense. So it kind of meets people where they are, and if they're not ready for something that torpedo like, I don't know necessarily if I ever retained anything until I started playing with these like longer periods of staying in there and playing with like some of these hypotheses, that I can say that helped me in any shape or form, mentally. But I am now discovering that there's people like you, and now you're not the only one. I do know of people that told me that literally it helped them, specifically DMT, helped them get over alcohol addictions, and they're just like, poof, gone. So I guess either the tool itself kind of repositioned itself in a way that now does help people in a faster way, or there was not enough data before, and now there's some data from people that is streaming in, and I would be excited to see like a research that is happening around specifically DMT with healing and things like this. My approach was very different. It wasn't around any of that kind of stuff. It was more around, can we substantiate that is that space actually real, like real, like you and I, like the wall. And set aside for a second these memes around, well, this is all Maya, this is all an illusion. Well, let's that aside for a second. Whatever you call real experience, is that space this real, right? And there are uh, research programs all over the world that are doing that, specifically with DMTX, right? But I do think that there's another space for more of, I guess, the population scientists to kind of come in and at least process some of the data around this. And just like you said, Adam, like you have a lot of experience with the molecule, but when you did it, you're like, dude, that's intense. Like there's the realism of it. You don't really expect that, and it opens a whole new window of kinds of gestalts to play with that allow you to understand maybe things that you couldn't before, because it's in this weird part of the Venn diagrams where it's not really what we call physical, but it behaves like a physical thing, and it's right there, and you can kind of, it's really permanent in a sense. It doesn't execute in the same way that you would expect hallucinations to do, which is, they sometimes morph, they change, you look away, you come back, and it's a little different. It has much more of this like fluidity and dream quality, even though it's very realistic. With the code, it's not like that. It's just there, sitting there, just like this, just like any other physical object, and it's just you're observing something real. And now the question becomes, what do you do with it, right? How do you use this information to do anything of substance with? And the answer is not always that easy to answer. I mean, we now I feel very blessed because we have very high caliber people walking into the picture now, from scientists to software engineers to game developers to people that are in finance and people that are in um, uh, project management, and it kind of takes a life of its own. All I can do is just kind of stay out of its way and just maybe guide the process a little bit and weigh in on what I think is reasonable and not reasonable to assume about these things. Just today, we had a really interesting meeting with a guy who played with this AI that is a kind of like a fancy edge detection AI, and he says that he thinks he can see some information that the AI is kind of coming up with just looking at the laser. So it's in its infancy, so I can't really comment about it too much. But we are now today. We had a meeting with some pretty intelligent people about how we kind of substantiate this, right? So some ideas were like, okay, we're going to film it in a very high resolution with some 4 to 8K cameras, going to bring it all the way up, going to have two different engines analyze it from two different perspectives, play with the machine learning part of it, and then see if anything pans out. These kind of directions of research is really where, for me, it really where the main direction is, because just like you said, it's not for everybody. It's just kind of like going to space. It's not for everybody. You can't have anybody become an astronaut just because it's intense. There's a lot that needs to go into preparing you for something like this. But you have to still grapple with the fact that it's there. How do you make it more accessible? How do you make it that more people that might not ever partake in the molecule will be able to weigh in on and interact with that kind of thing? But yeah, I mean, it's unfolding in front of our eyes, and it's an incredible time to be alive in.
You Adam, you got this glow around you now for some reason, dude. I don't know if anybody else can see that, but that's pretty interesting.
No,
I see it.
love
Um,
it.
so you guys are, you mentioned astronauts. Is psychonauts the correct term for you guys?
I, I mean, if you
I
ask
don't
me,
mind it.
I never associate myself with that, but I guess some people would call me a
Sure.
psychonaut, and I would assume Adam would be as well. But yeah,
Well, you guys have done it hundreds of times, I would imagine. I mean, at least Adam, he said he's done it hundreds of times. Has anybody ever contacted y'all about like, give us all the data that you have. What do you experience? Has anybody ever sat down with y'all and recorded, other than these podcasts? I mean, has anybody taken official statements from you, like scientists or anything?
Not me. I've reached out to some of the companies that are doing the DMTX and extended state stuff and said that I'd offer my mind and body for scientific research. But this is all new in its infancy, and so am I. I mean, up till a couple years ago, I was no one knew who I was, so we'll see. But I'm open. Maybe your podcast will get it exposed.
or maybe what we're developing, we won't need an external body. We might just have our own thing and then just bring you in to basically use people like you with your ability to stay in that space for a long time. Yeah, for me, my interaction with that scientific world now is at a particular junction, because I've started talking about my stuff a few years ago, and then it kind of went viral a few times. And just like everything else, it has its concentric circles. First, it was kind of certain people got excited about, other people ridiculed it, like the natural course of things with new information, right? And I think for the most part, for scientists in that field, there was really nothing to comment on, because trip reports are, They're, for the most part, there are as many of them as there are many people. So you it's very difficult to tease apart like what people's personal convictions are from something more substantial, which is something that DMTX is trying to do. But you can't just take on board all the information possible, because people just come up with the most random things and they think it's extremely substantial because it was meaningful to them. But it might be just it's a random thing that you saw. Like, it doesn't really lead anywhere, right? Which for the most part it is, actually. So then my interaction with that world only began very recently, maybe like a year ago, where there was enough of a talk about what I do where scientists were almost forced to comment on, right? And then it got into this new kind of interaction where in third person we were like communicating to each other through these, they would say something, I would say something, and stuff like that. And then much more recently, I actually came in direct contact with Gallimore. Well, I actually met Gallimore before, but like in the public sphere, where we kind of met together and actually had a public conversation, and it was very nice. And we came to some understandings of one another's positions. And Gallimore is just one person who is just one of these people that is considered to be kind of the top echelon, people who are studying this thing, that are known, wrote books about the subject, highly educated, worked in the field. They're experts for all intents and purposes. So it was a nice thing, and me and Andrew since then like stayed in really good communication terms. He even offered to help with the next steps of the experiment, and if I can design it properly. And that's kind of where it stands. But I do know that, at least at the moment, there's a lot of resistance to the way that I'm doing it. So maybe people feel in the scientific community that maybe I'm taking it it's too fast. It's too fast. They want to like pull the brakes. I understand that position, but I also can't shake off the fact that what I'm being communicated to from the other side, which is like, well, if you do that, you're going to be pretending to not know what you know. And I don't feel any obligation to do that. It's like I can understand the sentiment of like trying to pull the brakes if you yourself were not exposed to some of this information. But at the same time, there's a maybe urgency is the wrong word, but there's definitely a no, you gotta like get on it. Like there's things need to happen now, and people do report this sometimes, but we don't allow that to uh I'm looking for the right word because it's a sensitive subject, but maybe derange our perspective. Because what happens very often, people would get these messages, which I know for a fact are real, but they would come to them in a way of this urgency and of like, okay, you got to act. And people get a little deranged. They get into semi psychotic states, and they kind of go like, oh, we got to go. And they don't know what to do. And then it ramps you out of control, and very often it can lead to even quite some devastating psychological states that you can have. And we're talking about one that linger over time. So, for some reason, and I can't claim really, I can't say that I've worked hard to achieve this. It's just how my brain works. I'm pretty, I'm pretty disagreeable. So I resist propositions before I agree with propositions. It's just my natural thing, right? And because of that, I actually did not accept anything that the space was showing me for years and years and years, up to a point where literally they had to show me, like, put things in front of me in a way that was undeniable. And then they were like, what else do we have to tell you? This is actually happening. And I was like, oh, you want to tell me? They're like, yes, 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 you're correct. Can we move on? And then I was like, okay. And then I had to kind of accept it, and then I brought enough smart people around me that are understanding my process, understanding the process. And we are very careful about not allowing these very small tendencies that can creep up from this space and saying, go faster than you need to go. But at the same time, you can't go slower than what you need to go. So what we're going to do while other people are trying to substantiate the claims for themselves, which is absolutely fine, we're going to be focusing on trying to substantiate functionalities of these truths that we already know to be true. So to see if we can create perturbations, make something work that we couldn't do before without knowing this, create a theoretical framework around what the code actually is it code, what is actually doing, how it relates to what we call physical matter, Is there anything that has to do with human cognition that changes in any shape or form? All of these uh, tests is something that we're now aiming to do in the near future. It's probably in the next few months.
Can you tell us a little bit about the experiment? Like, how does the process work? Why the lasers? Why do you have to take DMT to look into the lasers? What do you see? And also, how did you get into doing this? Like, what made you decide I want to do this very thing?
So to know the full story, I will just tell people to wait for the documentary. It's going to come out at the
Okay,
end of the year
sure.
because it's a long story. It is it it lasts. It stretches over about a decade, so it's a long story. But the short version of it is that I basically had a set of experiences that were even more real than what people report on DMT usually. So, like, I've done DMT many, 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 many times, and then something happened, and all of a sudden it became even more real than that. It became just like regular life, basically. And at that point, I said, hold on. With all my scientific predispensations, this is not a hallucination. I don't care what anybody says. This cannot be just mind made, what people say. It's just impossible. And at that point, I said, okay, well, how do we determine that? There has to be a way, if it's real, there has to be a way to determine that. Otherwise, there's no distinction between that and what we call hallucinations. And then I said, okay, well, let's start thinking from first principles. We know light is involved because I can see it with my eyes. Now, there's a few things that must happen, must be the case if it is real. Real in the sense that we think of realness. It has to have some rules by which it is uh, under which it's operating, the space itself. Otherwise, there's no distinction between it and just chaos, right? And then you're going to have some geometry, some topology, and you're going to have some entry points to it because sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't see it. So that was kind of like my first principles I was thinking from. And then for over a period of, I don't know, good 5, 6 years total from that point, where in the beginning I would just enter the space every day. I would just basically be on DMT all day, every day for, I don't know, a year plus. And I would just like be in that space in addition to being in regular life. And I think that actually did something to my brain where my brain got used to that space enough to make it super stable. Like I can hold it like it's a regular space. And from there, I started asking questions that are more coherent instead of this chaos happening around me. But even then, it wasn't very forthcoming. Like I never got information that you would expect to be there if it's like a real civilization talking to you. It was like, hey, can you show me how to build a spaceship? Something. That never came, right? And but I was like, well, wait a second, why not? Like, hold on. You are telling me you're real. You're not hiding it. You're telling me all these things, and back then I wasn't really thinking about simulated or something like this. I was just thinking like an adjacent dimension or something. I was like, you're telling me all these things, so clearly you're not hiding it. You're telling it to me directly. And when I'm asking you a question, like, hey, how do I prove I'm not crazy? You don't answer. What's the deal? And I slowly started realizing that it's either not allowed or impossible because maybe it's just the translation is too complex. Like there's just nothing that translates from what this space is doing to what is happening to us, but yet we are merging in some points. But then I was kind of like, okay, I mean, it's awesome, but I'm going to stop doing this whole, like I'm doing this all day kind of thing. And then years and years and years of once in a while something would kind of pop into my head, something would like make sense to me. I would follow that thread, read some papers, try and understand, try and fold it into what we already understand about physics. Specifically, I was thinking around light scattering and quantum computers and that kind of stuff. And then eventually it landed, which is the details of the story. That's what the documentary follows. But then eventually I landed on this idea that it kind of was pretty strong in within the what you I guess can call my methodology. Within the parameters of that methodology, that was like a strong signal. It was like, yes, diffracted light, 650 nanometers, has to be that way. Something's supposed to happen. I didn't know what it was, had no idea. I was just okay, let's just order a laser, easy enough. Had to wait for it because it was COVID. It was like 3 months. The only ones that were available, the ones that you have to build a circuit for. There were no like one of these like laser pens available anywhere. So I ordered this thing. It arrives. I build a circuit. I turn it on. Smoke DMT. I see this code. And to anybody who doesn't know about what we're talking about here, you basically see kind of like in the Matrix code running in the surface, but not quite the same. It has different kind of degrees of freedom. It both rotates around these buckyballs and these big columns that are moving around, and also kind of switches in spot. And it looks a lot kind of like Japanese katakana in Hebrew, but not quite. But the more important thing is not the details, but the quality of what you see. It's extremely realistic. Like it's just there as an object that you're looking at. And then I started showing other people. Everybody saw the same thing, or at least all the people that saw it saw the same thing. And then the rest is history. Then I started talking about it publicly, and then here we are talking today, basically.
So, and I'll get to what Adam experienced when he did it,
Sure.
or when he's the many different times he's done it. Do different people sometimes see different things? Like,
Never.
are there
When
people
you see
or
when you
anything?
see the full thing, you never go back to seeing anything else. You might see more details in it. Yes, that it's very complex. It's not just code or there's it's almost like an organic tapestry. There's a lot of this happening there, and we have a lot of this stuff documented, but you never all of a sudden see something else. What is the case is that we now know that the whatever the code is doing, it can produce content. So you can have all of a sudden the code that you still see. So you see the details of the little digits, but it can sometimes morph into scenarios, which I guess is what DMT does in general, which is just, I guess what you see, if I have to guess, you see the behind the scenes, you see the pixels of how DMT usually produces content, just happening on a much, much higher degree of resolution. So you can see the pixels doing the thing. But yeah, I've once seen the whole Family Guy episode in there.
Oh,
Like,
really?
full on, like not kind of like no, I saw Peter and Lois, and they were doing. Your hometown, right? Adam,
Rhode Island,
but
Quahog.
yeah, yeah, but full on, and so clearly there's no Family Guy in a DMT, right? So that's obviously content, but the characters are still there. There's things that are never change, and they're the ones that give rise to all the other things that people might be reporting, like the shapes and the mandalas and all of these things.
Why do you think you call it source code or code?
I call
Is
it
it
Yeah, I call it the code of reality, just kind of like people use the term dark matter. We don't know that dark matter is matter. We have no idea. We don't know what it is. So we just use a placeholder name to maybe fold it into the closest thing we think it might be. And the reason it's called dark matter is because it interacts with gravity. So we call it matter because all matter interacts with gravity. But we don't know that it's matter. We have no idea what it is. So in the same way, I call it the code of reality because it seems like it's a self-executing code of some sort. It's definitely a language of some sort that is doing something, and it exists in every point in space and doesn't seem to be influenced by anything that is surface level. In other words, if you try and create sounds around it, temperatures around it, you can try and emote towards it. You can do all kinds of things. It doesn't really care. It's just doing what it's doing. And it's kind of equivalent to shining a light at something in the dark, and then you just see it. You see that thing. And because of that, it seems to me that whatever level it's operating on, it's either completely orthogonal to our space, so it's not influenced by anything in our space, or it is on some very fundamental level, maybe on a quantum level, that only when we're going to create quantum perturbations around it, you will all of a sudden see the difference. That's what we're trying to work on right now. Do I know that it codes for physical reality? No, but it seems like it's self-executing code. It's the way that it kind of appears.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Is it like a what are the implications of it? Does it mean that we live in a matrix? Does it mean we live in a holographic reality?
So that's a very good question. I actually was pointed that out by my fiance that eventually saw the code, and she said, "I mean, there's no question that this is nuts, but I don't know if I would say to you that that necessarily tells me we live in a simulation." And then I had to kind of look back and think, why am I actually so convinced that that's the case? And then I realized it has to do with a lot of other data points that actually have nothing to do with the laser. Well, for the first thing is that they basically showed it to me. So they basically told me directly, the simulators, that this is the case. They literally showed me that, how it happens. And then when I started, there was a glimmer. They showed me a hint of that first. And then after they've shown me that, I was like, wait, why would you show me that? And then I thought maybe they're just stress testing me. Like they want to see what happens to my emotions under certain scenarios, right? And then I started seeing more hints of that, but much more specific. And then I was like, wait. And then I started asking directly, because usually when I would nail a question down, they would just answer yes, like if I would be correct. But they wouldn't answer. I'd be like, wait, are you simulating us? And then there was no answer. And every time there was no answer for like a year plus. So I kind of got sick of asking. But then already I had the laser, and they were like, I was trying to figure out what it was. And there was a lot of, when I was experimenting with the laser, there was a lot of occurrences with them basically saying, this is your key. And like, for example, it's very it's very difficult to kind of figure it out. So I was kind of frustrated. I was sitting there, and what started happening is that a console appeared for me, like a computer console that just hovers there in the room with screens, like an augmented reality menu kind of thing. Imagine like a Tony Stark menu that just opens in front of him, right? Like that. And that appears for me 100% of the time. It's the same console. I have a video that I made about this, and I'm now working with Laszlo, the game developer. He created a VR environment where we see that console so people understand how realistic it is. But it's just literally sitting there right in front of me. So as far as I know, people sometimes experience screens on DMT, but it's not like that. It's just like I'm opening a laptop. Like the thing just appears. Smoke one puff, the console appears. So when that started happening, at that point I was like, holy bro, what is going on? Like, it's just, that's it. And then I was asking this question in my mind. I was like, what do we do with the laser? And it was pointed at the floor at that instance when I was on DMT. And the console brought in a new capsule that I've never seen before. It comes always in these capsules that kind of open up, whatever they want me to interact with. And there was this sleeve, kind of like this iridescent, beautiful sleeve of some sort, clearly like put your arm in. So I put my arm in, and I could feel it. I could feel it physically. And it starts moving my hand slowly this way. So they're not without a sense of humor. They're like slowly moving my hand very dramatically, and then like this, and then just pointing at the laser on the floor. They're like, this, look at this. What is this? Figure this out. And I go, oh. So they're like, yeah, just don't scatter. What is this? And then after that, there was one instance where, so usually I'm already kind of in the habit of not really getting into the details of the story, but maybe it's like 1 minute. I'll just tell you what basically happened. I was on my balcony, smoked a bunch of it. Nothing was happening, but I could feel, it's hard to explain, but it's almost like they communicate to you before you're even on it. They kind of do these little taps from the other side. They're like, keep going. And so basically they're like, you need to load up. We need a lot of fuel for this one. So I go, okay. So then I smoke. I smoke maybe, I don't know, like no exaggeration, maybe 35 full tokes from the vape, with a very powerful vape actually, and nothing was happening the whole time. And then I feel they're like do this thing where it's like releases. It goes, and I see this thing come in front of me. It's like this iridescent looking helmet thing, and it did this little gesture and it started vibrating into this crazy vibration. And then I was in Pasadena. So between the trees and the mountains, I could see, you know how the SETI satellite dishes, they're kind of like pointing at the sky, right? Looking, search for extraterrestrials. So imagine dishes like that came out from between the mountains and the trees. And I'm talking real, like real, like you and I, not a DMT hallucination thing, just there. And it all came out at the same time. It was like, my eyes were literally like this. And the dishes had the codes on them. It was like space gray, just like the console is, and it was all the code. So basically, it's saying we're ordering simulation number 457, whatever it is. Like we need simulation, order it up, bring this simulation in, and I see the entire everything in front of me, the mountains, the streets, everything was stripped to a grid, just like in Tron, just. And then I see something on the bottom of the street right in front of me that I can recognize, but I can't really understand what it is. So then I realize what I'm looking at, it's the entire other side of the street, upside down on some kind of an assembly line, just sitting, like imagine my arm is like an assembly line in like a Tesla factory or something. And you have the other side of the street with the buildings and everything upside down, just resting on it like this. And then the whole arm of the whole street goes so it just lands on the other side of the street, and then it starts reforming everything in zigzag. And I see cars appear out of nowhere. I see people appear out of nowhere. Just like everything appearing, going in zigzags. And I'm talking real, like I'm talking to you right now. And then the whole thing just kept on doing this until it goes to closer and closer to me in zigzags, and eventually goes and it goes, and I'm standing there, and there was just silence because they're kind of like,
There's your answer.
and let me tell you, it does do something to you. I thought it wouldn't, but it does. Because when you don't think maybe, but when you know, that's why they didn't tell me. Because they were not sure. There was a lot of deliberation. I later learned there was a lot of deliberations across many levels whether this is allowed, because it might destabilize things. Like, and I guess I was like a test subject, and maybe they've done it also with others, but I was definitely a test subject. Was like, okay, what does it do to somebody inside of one of the simulations? And it does there. Definitely has this like gutting feeling in the beginning. It's like, like somebody really knocked all the air out of you, because it's like the first thing obviously is like, wait, does this all like doesn't matter? Like, am I just a puppet? Like what? Like all of these thoughts, right? And then slowly I started recognizing that obviously that's not the case. So like all the levels of emergence, they're real. It's not like the fact that you're produced through another layer is really not different, as long as you're conscious, than you being produced by the laws of physics. There's not much difference if you're simulated by the laws of physics or by another computational layer that is simulating your laws of physics. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is that you're experiencing it. So that's real, right? And you're fully free. There's no, you're a complete black box to them. There's no control over your agency or outcomes, completely open ended. So in that sense, everything is exactly how you thought it was, which is just the world is just unfolding, and whatever you do influences the next step, and that's what happens. It's just that, yes, and they basically were saying, yes, we are literally simulating your space. Yes, you are in a computer software. And in that instance, from that point on, I kind of started getting used to it. And I think that what happens to you, when you know something, it's impossible to you to go back to the state of not knowing it, which actually is the cause of a lot of miscommunication for people sometimes. And I'm very sensitive to that, because people don't always, they're not in the know. So it's kind of like, you have to be careful with how we communicate this. But because I also know that for the most part, people's brain just rejects the proposition outright. It's not like it's going to destabilize them psychologically. When you know, when you it takes a moment for you to kind of get used to it. And the final thing I would say on that is that what I later discovered, I equated that feeling, and it took me some work to realize this, but I realized that I felt this feeling before. And then I realized that we all feel it at different stages of life. But the most pronounced for us usually is when you start discovering that you are an actor versus an observer in the world. So when you discover that your parents don't know everything for the first time, you're like, wait, they don't know, and I can find out something they don't know. It's like it has like this, like, whoa, like the matrix is being lifted off of your eyes. It's like, yeah, they just people like you, and they don't know many things. So that kind of a feeling of, I guess, growing pains it's the same feeling. It was just like amplified a lot, which is like, well, now you know that there's a bigger system. There's definitely a system of checks and balances. So definitely try and lead a positive life. But beyond that, you have responsibility as the agent on the level that you are. And the responsibility just grew exponentially because you now understand that there's like way greater things at stake. But also you understand that, don't worry, everything is exactly where it needs to be on the other hand. And there are some things that are being, I guess, held in place, so to speak, for you, that you don't have to do that. So all of that was kind of bundled into this gut punch that I felt at that instance. So that, to your question, why am I so convinced with simulation? It was literally showed directly that is in fact the case.
Adam, do you want to ask any questions, man?
And that's the power of DMT. No, I that was the first time I've heard that. That was awesome to hear. No, what I mean, so I'm glad Danny came on to actually share the derivation of the experiment and kind of how it all came to be. That's why. So when I got exposed to it, I heard some of this stuff and was like, wow, I want to check it out for myself with my own bullshit filter. And that's something I'm going to apply to, we talked about this before recording, or right at the beginning, that's something that I think I really hold value is my authenticity and rawness. And I wanted to apply that to this laser experiment. And that's where hopefully maybe I can add some, just a data point to it. So
Absolutely.
I'll ask.
and if I could, maybe the one, or not one, but the big data point that I could add to the experiment, if anybody's looking for practical, uh, application of this, or if they're looking at the laser and maybe haven't seen it yet, because it is something that does take a little bit of practice, and it is something, like I said, you have to kind of train your eyes to see it and to see through the different levels. But when Danny mentioned the geometry of it and the distinct kind of pattern, that's where I really want to make sure that that's a distinct difference with me. So I mentioned, and right before you came on, Danny, we were talking about the normal swirling of a laser. So anybody can look at a laser projected on the wall, and you're going to see movement. It's always dynamic. It's always, there's all this weird tiny shit going on. That is not the code. That's the normal movement of a laser that anybody can see at any point. Even when you're looking through the laser and into that, like I said, it looks like 2 or 3 or 4 feet, or even kind of infinite, like beyond the laser. That in my opinion is not the code. And you do see a lot of swirly movement shit. The first time that I saw it actually come out, it was that kind of shock, like, oh, that's it. And for me, it was just very distinct, clear, crisp columns. So whether it be column or rows, it was just very distinct lines of falling, cascading, that was in its own category. But then within it, it was each in its own little like pixel. Within that pixel, it was moving and spinning. And as those columns were going by the side, as the symbols kind of lined up with one another, then there was a 90-degree kind of like horizontal movement that kind of came out of it, as well as the symbols kind of lined up and matched. But it was very, like I said, very distinct columns, rows, 90-degree angle, which is different from the chaotic normal movement dynamic of the laser and all the swirly shit, and within each one of those pixels, that distinct symbol. And people, like I said, I've had people, well, what is it, like, is it it and I kind of agree with Danny. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Like, I could sketch them on a paper and kind of show you what it looks like, and people have done that. But the fact that clear distinct grid work came out of it with symbols that moved in a very distinct pattern, unique geometry to everything else around it, including the chaotic DMT space. So that DMT realm in its own right has its own movements and you know, physics to it. The code kind of stood beyond and separate to that as well. And I think that's what kind of stood out to me, where it really was, once you got to that perfect layer of looking within it and that perfect magnification of your eyes or whatever, it clearly stood out. And that's what I want to convey to people, where it's now what it is, what it means, what the symbols are, what that means to our human species. I'm open to explore that. But when people say that it's not there, or that it's just the normal laser movement, or just the normal DMT space movement, I would like to say, no, it's not. And it is a clear code.
Yeah, I think you're nailing it exactly on the head, because I think that people's tendency is to first kind of try and substantiate it something that they can, think about in terms of that makes sense to them. Like, for example, they want to say, well, can you transcribe it? Can you, maybe discern what it is and translate it? Because then we can maybe tease out some meaning out of it. I think the reason that it's missing the point on a few points, first of all, like you said, that part actually doesn't matter, because the second you see it, it's like a thing in there that is actually there. That alone changes everything. Like, without anything, without decoding it, it just, that it's there. The second part is, and I guess this takes a little bit more breaking it down, so I don't blame anyone that they don't think of it necessarily. But if I show you the English alphabet, if you don't know English, you will never know English. There's nothing about the English alphabet that teaches you English. It's just, these are the symbols. You have to see the usage of it. There has to do with context, like grammar, different. Again, you have to see examples of it being used to understand what is the logic of the usage of this language. And by the way, it's never by nobody ever learns a language by learning the entire logic of the language. That never happens. You learn by example. You understand what it is. You code your brain to do so. So until we start to understand what the code actually is, if it is even a code, whatever that is, you first have to understand what is the context of its usage. And even when we try and decipher older languages, there's already a lot of context just by the fact that we know it's a human language, right? So the fact that if we know that ancient humans used it, there's only so many ways that we can write language, right? Up and down, left or right. Like maybe, I don't even know if that's true, but maybe there was a language written down, up, but I don't think if that's even, but it's not going to be like go 3 inches to the right, then jump 5 inches, then the next, like that's never going to be that, right? So that's already a data point. Then we also have experts in the spoken word. We know how pronunciations kind of evolved over ages, and that gives you a lot of information about what these things can be or cannot be, and that kind of gives you context. But if you're studying something you don't even know what it is, forget about languages, spoken languages, code languages, you don't know what it is. So now, what exactly are you decoding? So what are the rule set that you're sampling from? It's literally impossible. So I would say that first, for me, the important thing is to try and substantiate what is it. Does it respond to any physical perturbation, magnetic fields, different materials, maybe even people's attention in some way that we don't currently recognize, maybe. But all of this needs to be studied before we start trying to make sense of the linguistic elements of it, because I think that's just kind of like you're just fumbling in the dark. And I always add to this, I would be the first one to congratulate somebody who proves me wrong. Truly. Like, I would love to be wrong about this. It's just that my understanding of the situation tells me that's a fool's errand errand at the moment. But if people can prove me wrong and they're like, hey, you didn't think of this, I'll be the first one to say, yo, bravo, that's amazing. I just don't see how that can happen before you go through this step.
So the code that you see, that's the code we exist in. That's what the code that our consciousness exists in.
I
And
don't
then
know.
there's okay. So but there's
Yeah,
the
I don't know. I
DMT.
don't know. I can tell you one thing that I did discern from speaking to people at this point for years, because people always email me, I see the code without the laser, I see the code without the molecule. And when you drill down to the proposition, you discover that it's actually they're seeing a different code. A lot of people seeing codes under different conditions, but it's not the same as the code in the laser for a few reasons. One of them is that it's much more malleable. I see this code too, like I've seen it, so that's how I know it's different. You have these like subsumed in surfaces, kind of like almost like it's a like somebody smudged them like behind the surface, kind of, and you can sometimes change them with your attention. You can, excuse me, you can interact with it in some form. And also, it's not as stable in space. It's kind of doing this wishy-washy thingy. But if whatever's in the laser doesn't have that quality, it's just there. And what it tells me logically is that there's an infinite array of these codes, and they are making up everything. And there are codes that are closer to what we are as a conscious being, and that's why you can change them with your attention. And there are codes that code for, well, whatever physical is, because it is a thing, right? There's a difference between it and everything else, it seems. So even if you want to say it's all mind or it's all whatever, but there's a different, you can't walk through the wall. Why is that? That I think there's layers of the code, and this seems to be like a more rigid layer of the code. And I don't know if you know this, Anna, but this is actually fascinating. I only learned this like a month ago. There's a team from Japan, Sky. I'll find it and I'll actually text it to you because I texted it just today to. There's a team in Japan that been collecting data from light coming from stars since 2014, and they've been analyzing the lights ever since. And they ran it through many statistical analyses with machine learning, deep neural nets. What they concluded so far is that it seems that there is code or some kind of language encoded in light from stars that, and they discern this with deep statistical analyses, that it is not pareidolia. So pareidolia is when your brain kind of completes the picture, like when you see a bunny in clouds and things like this. So it's like your brain does this, right? They discerned that it is not pareidolia. There's some kind of a thing that there's real data there. Interesting. Which also kind of, I'll send you the story in a moment, but it also kind of tells me that there must be, if there's code in light, that there must be code coming from the laser too, that hits whatever code is happening in the surface, and they interact. And if you look closely, I don't know if you already saw it, Adam, but on the surface of the wherever the laser hits the wall, if you look closely, you will see another layer of a different looking some kind of digits, and some of them are even, and this one gets weird. Some of it is even like code, like almost like English letters on a blimp. You know how they have these commercials? It's just the message kind of runs.
Yo, so it's like the ticker symbol at the stock market.
Yes,
So
exactly. And
my
that I
girlf
think is in the light, because when we're moving the light, it's moving with it. Continue.
so my girlfriend and I have done the experiment. She has not seen that inner code that we were talking about,
Mhm.
but that ticker running left to right. So my experience when I'm seeing the code is it's typically dropping from top to bottom. This, when she was looking at it, that running code, and I saw it as well, was yeah, that ticker symbol, and that's exactly what she said, which is, "Did you see that? How it's moving just like that?" So,
Yeah,
yeah,
so you can see
and
both at the same time.
before you got on too, I was saying it's very similar to if you've ever looked at a slide under a microscope where you're trying to, adjust the actual zoom where you can get to the different levels of the cell or whatever you're looking at.
Exactly like that.
You juice There's multiple layers in the depths of that laser space, and finding what layer that code is in takes a little bit of challenge, and that's where I think the practice comes in. So I've
I think you're
used
exactly
using
right.
my eyelashes as kind of like screens to kind of.
Like this.
Yep,
Yep,
exactly.
yep.
I've used, wearing a hood, so that way you can block the laser and really get right to the side of it.
Mhm.
Uh, I've used, and just for somebody that you saw me smoking my pipe. When you light a pipe like that and you're kind of crossing your eyes, when you look at the glowing cherry amber in the pipe, it almost looks kind of pixelated, and I found like that's almost the same kind of um, muscle tension that you need in your eyes when you're looking at the laser, which is just that you're not really looking at anything, and it's almost too close but too far away, and yeah,
You
you have to
relax the
play with
gaze.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
But when
No,
you
you
see it, it's instant. And that, to be perfectly honest with you, last night, excuse me, 2 nights ago, uh, I did I did it the laser experiment. I did all of the everything there, and I didn't see the laser. And there was a couple factors and a couple things, and you know, but it because it took some practice, and I could see multiple different layers, and I saw a lot of what was in the laser, but I didn't quite find that that one level, where the
Interesting.
last time I did it 4 times in a row, and all 4 times I saw it pretty quickly, and I was able to get there right away.
Was it the same surface?
It was the same surface, but I do, and I said this to Brad about the importance of really respecting it. I blasted pretty deep, and when I was sitting there
Mm.
looking at the laser, I kinda had to roll over, and it was just like, "Yeah, no, like, you've gotta
Yeah, you got it, you
you
got it.
gotta wait this one out a little bit." And then when I came back, I don't wanna say I was too kinda, like, punch struck, but I couldn't get my eyes to kinda relax, and I just said, I'm not gonna try to push this." Because,
Yeah.
again, having respect for it. If it's not I wasn't
Absolutely.
gonna try to force something, knowing that the first 4 times I was fortunate. And again, I've seen what I've seen. I don't need anybody to believe me. I'm convinced that there's something different than just the normal laser movement, and that it is a freestanding something. Now, once again,
Something,
is it a
exactly.
code that's a language? And I agree. I'm glad you brought that up. It could be an architectural code. It could be a whatever. It could code for anything. It doesn't just need to be a verbal language that's conveying, thought. It could be something way more
Modulo with the
fundamental.
modulo with the question, why would it be left to be recognizable in this way for beings like us? Because it could have just been
Well,
wiggles. Like, it could have just been computer code that is unrecognizable to anything inside the simulation. What tells me that it's a breadcrumb and it's important is because it is designed to be recognizable on this level. So a monkey wouldn't be able to do it, but humans can. So there's a certain level of evolution that you have to kind of reach before you get to interact with that. And really, the fact that you get to interact with it is the fact that you recognize it, which makes
this
perfect sense.
This is perfect segue to maybe, and I'm not telling Brad what to do with his podcast, but as we kind of tie everything together, this is perfect because one, the name of his podcast, the Awakened Podcast, and this
Mhm.
is what we talked about for about the 35 minutes prior to you coming on, was there's multiple ways to become awakened, whether it's a DMT blast, something traumatic, an experience with a UFO, religious experience, whatever it may be. But once your human body is able to expand beyond its normal 5 senses at a dial of 10, and you're able to dial those up to whatever it may be, 100 or 1,000, but then add these other levels of senses and sensitivity to your human perception or antenna, you're able to stay here in the current moment now, to be present here, and then you're able to tap into these beautiful synchronicities, these beautiful happenings, these resonant kind of vibrations that you're able to tap into. And I think that that's what this is kind of all about. Big picture is, yeah. So why is this being exposed to us? And it's not us, like all the people that do DMT are necessarily special. It's more, well, we're taking the time to quiet our minds, to have intentional thought, to try to increase what type of information we're able to receive, and because of that, we're being rewarded. And I, but I think that anybody that's looking to increase their sensitivity and explore these topics are going to get rewarded in their own way, and maybe with their own different codes. But right now, we're being blessed that, yeah, we're bringing this, given this breadcrumb to say, when we vibrate at this DMT level or frequency, we're going to show you something.
Yeah, and it's just there for you to reckon. I would agree with all of that. That there's different levels to the awakening, and it will come about
Well,
in all the possible ways. And
just like
and
maybe the code of love and empathy, like how easy it is to see that once you've been awakened, or how easy it is to share love and connection with others once that code has been shown. But I mean, how many people aren't exposed just to that most basic of fundamental codes of humanity? And I think there's just layers of that. And for the people that have near-death experiences, they're seeing some different codes. For the people that have epilepsy, they're having different codes. The telepathy tapes, that's a popular
yeah.
thing. We talked about that in yours.
Mhm.
They're tapping in to some other type of code where they've been able to communicate very complex thoughts without verbal language. So, and I think there's something to be said on all of these. And I think that's why we're really lucky and blessed to be in this time where people like that are putting out podcasts. People like Danny are putting together the funds and connecting all types of people to try to figure out what this may mean, knowing, or excuse me, approaching it with the attitude of, I don't have the answer. I have an intellectual curiosity, and let's explore this together. And
Yeah,
I
but
love that perspective.
we stand on what we know. That's also
Oh,
an
hell yeah.
important. Yeah.
And it's okay if you don't believe me,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
you,
yeah.
and that's fine. Let people have that space, and
Sure.
cool, then get the fuck off my path, and whatever. I'll join up with the people that want to walk down with me, and we'll do some cool stuff.
I couldn't agree more. It's just like being humble, but at the same time not caving into other people's expectation of what they
Right.
decide that you should declare what's okay to say that you know or don't know.
Yeah. And let's
Um,
harness Terrence McKenna here and say, if you don't believe the power of DMT or that there's a code in the laser, smoke DMT and look for the laser.
for the laser.
And once you see it, then you're going to be the biggest, Danny Goler proponent. That they'll be on your show being like, this is it. So, if you question it, but maybe say that, I say that with respect, with reverence,
Of course.
with a joke. But if you really think that you and I are trying to be bullshit or swindlers, then sit in that space, ask to be shown the code with respect, and you'll get shown it. And then when you do, then you'll know what we're talking about.
So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say that I just to add to what you guys were just saying, it feels like uh, everything is happening almost on a timeline that's kind of getting quicker and quicker and quicker. Like
Mhm.
it just seems like nobody was talking about DMT for many, many, many years, and then Rogan is put into this position to blast it out to 11 million listeners every episode, right? And to put this into the mainstream, he penetrated the collective consciousness, the bubble, right? And then you guys come into the conversation. I even come into the conversation in some small way, which is kind of weird, which is what Adam and I were talking about earlier. Is like, I didn't want to do a podcast necessarily. I just kind of got thrust into it somehow, and now I'm in it. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? But I'm just going with the flow of things, and things are just happening. So it's interesting that it almost seems like there's, okay, now it's the time for this, now it's the time for that. We just have to place parts in some way to make some bigger thing happen. But what is that bigger thing? Is that the next level of evolution, or
You
have
will
you?
only know if you align yourself with it, and then it's the greater good of all. Basically, I do think that all of these things will creep up from everywhere. The telepathy tapes, the studies that they're doing with Neuralink, all of these things, even though they sound like completely different hemispheres of the human mind, they're the same occurrence. It's all crescendoing for a reason. It's all happening at once because the understanding is coming. There's no way around that. You have to become part of the thing that understands whatever it is that is being understood, so to speak. I
Can I ask you, what is the understanding? You-
well, the full understanding cannot be spoken; it can only be experienced. But
Okay.
this is why the awakening is such a dicey thing, because you can see kind of what happens to people when they go through it, but it's very difficult, if not impossible, to deliver the full scope of it. Because I can even say right now, well, it's the discovery that we're all one and we're merging into some kind of a higher system. It's like, okay, we all kind of understand what these words mean, but do we really understand what it is? No. There's not even close. It's like me trying to describe to you the color red if you've never seen red. There's nothing I can say about blue that will produce the color red in your brain if you've never seen one. So there's some kind of a unjumpable gap that has to do with the experience of whatever that is, then the full understanding and the description of that thing. And these descriptions, by the way, I'm the first one to say that they're not cheap. Descriptions are actually important. They are symbolic representations of these things that kind of help us that glide through these very complex spaces with more grace. But at the same time, it is always based on experience first, description second. And very often we confuse them because we rely so much on descriptive things, mathematics and things like this, to tell us what the real thing is. Which, of course, it's almost so like when you speak to someone who's really deep into like the physics community, right? They're actual physicists. Unless they're a very open-minded physicist, it's very difficult to convince them that they have no idea what an atom is. Because they say, "What do you mean?" Like, because they describe all the parameters of an atom or all the things we think it is in terms of everything else that is going on. And then they can go into like, "No, but that's I know what you're saying. It's a perturbation of the quantum field. It's not an actual particle." I'm like, "No, no, no. You don't understand what I'm saying. You've never experienced an atom. You don't know what an atom is. You have a conceptual framework, and it's almost impossible to get that into people's heads because they think that whatever ideas they have about the thing is the thing, which of course it isn't. And I'm not saying that our ideas about the things don't matter, or because people go that far sometimes. Of course they matter. They're part of the thing itself. So if the thing itself is your experience of it, within that experience of it, what is included is your descriptive model of it as applied and coupled to your experience of it. So if I know what a tree is, I have one experience with it, I can go and hug the tree, right, and enjoy the presence of a tree. And people would say, yeah, but if you're going to study all this stuff about how this tree works, it's not going to add to your experience of the tree. Wrong. Yes, it will. Because now that you know all the stuff about the tree, it adds to your presence with the tree if you can combine those two. So both of them are necessary to unlocking some kind of a thing. And it's only because people are convinced that there's a competition between don't worry about technology anymore, telepathy tapes. That's it. We just do this all day and we all hover. I don't think so. There's something about the world that requires both modalities to come in. There you go. To come into to come into some kind of a celebration together with balloons to basically bring us to this whatever next step is. So you ask me what is that thing to understand? Well, I can describe it, but we won't understand until we go through that thing like fully.
Yeah, our
Just quick thing, guys. I'm so sorry. I have a. Let's do this because I have my wife is like sitting there and like pressuring me also with the
I'm
dogs.
sorry. Yeah.
No, no, I'm sorry. It's
No, this has been
completely
great.
my bad.
Thank you.
I
Been a great
completely
conversation.
overbooked myself. I'm gonna stay for another 5 minutes. Let's jazz for another 5 minutes. If you wanna, we can do another one if you want, and I'll open the whole evening for it. We can talk for 4 or 5 hours. I don't
It's
care.
okay.
Let's be a lot
Yeah.
of fun. Yeah,
Well, can I ask you one more question before you go?
sure.
When you do this experiment, you're not really changing your eyesight, right? You're sort of changing your consciousness or the way you view things, right? You're not changing your eyeballs, you're not changing your
Yeah.
sight. You're
You're not
changing
looking
how
to the third eye kind of thing. Yeah. It's a
right.
very physical thing with the caveat that we don't really know what causes some people to need more time to see. I just saw it. I'm a terrible person to ask because I from like 5 feet away, turn on the laser, look, I just saw it right away. So I don't know what it's like to not see it. But one thing that we figured out in the last experiment we did just now with the Carter, with my partner in Code of Reality, with this lady that was having a hard time. She had these ornamented windows. She has ornamented windows, kind of like in a church. And what I saw is that there's one opening of no colors, and the rest of it is kind of like, there's like colors on the window, and then there's one area with no colors. So it's like a small patch. And this little practice is something anybody can do with something like this, and it actually encapsulates everything you just said, Adam, which is all the stuff that you said about the trying to see it, which you nailed, by the way. Um, so if you're looking through the window, if there's any region of the window that is like there's not a lot of windows like that, but maybe you can find either a slightly broken window, any glass that has any extra kink in it of some sort, either something broken or maybe there's a lot of colors in one area with no colors. And if you can look through the part that is not colored, and you can look from a distance, you can look through onto whatever is outside, and then refocus and look at the area on the surface of the window. That gesture of looking, I know I just texted you, babe. When you're looking in and back to the window, in and back to the window, that gesture with your eyes, just feel what it feels like to change that focal distance. That's basically what you need to really practice more than anything else. I know, baby, I know. Okay.
And it's like
Yeah.
the same magic eye thing like we brought up too.
Well, listen, Dan, I'll let you go, man. Dan, good thoughts on YouTube and Spotify and wherever you get your podcast. Brother, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank
I
you so much
appreciate
for
it.
having me, brother. And please invite me again. We'll definitely do this again without all this time pressure.
That's all right. I got a wife too, bro. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Buddy.
See you.
Have a good night. Bye.
So, what's the difference between ayahuasca and DMT? That's kind of a let's go off on away from the lasers a little bit. I mean, because I honestly don't know. Is there a big difference between the two? Can you do the same things with ketamine and ibogaine and ayahuasca and DMT? Is it all different experiences? Like, is DMT a totally different experience than ayahuasca? Are you going to get different ideas or um, a lot of people say that these things help advance their lives in some way? Like, is ayahuasca gonna teach you something about a human experience versus, like, DMT gonna teach you, like, bigger picture experiences?
Loaded one there. So just the basics, and people ask that quite often, and that's why I'm happy to kind of have some clarification. So, is DMT ayahuasca? Is ayahuasca the same? Is it so? Yes and no. The main ingredient in ayahuasca is DMT. So just kind of putting that out there. But when I talk about DMT and like what Dana and I were talking about when we're smoking DMT, um, that's DMT in its crystal form. So that's the trip that takes 6, 7, 8 minutes. It's really, really intense, but then you come back and there's no hangover. There's no, you're really just back to full clarity. But that's where the really profound visuals, access to these realms, talking to entities, that happens, and it happens instantly. Ayahuasca is not smoked. It's drank, and ayahuasca in particular is two very specific plants. So that's why in my book, and I have recipes about how to make ayahuasca. I call it DMT crystals and then DMT brew, because there's thousands of plants that have DMT, and there's plenty of other ingredients that you can add. And it's an MAOI, so a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So if you were just to drink just straight up DMT or just eat DMT, you wouldn't have any effect because your body metabolizes it extremely quickly. That added ingredient in ayahuasca allows the slowdown of that metabolism, and that's where you're getting the prolonged session. So DMT and that's different from 5-MeO DMT, which is a whole nother conversation. That's with the toad venom. But regular NN-DMT is crystal form. You smoke it or vape it and lasts 7, 8 minutes. Ayahuasca or DMT brew is a liquid, and it's drinking. Typically, it's a cup or two, and that's the one where you're purging. Typically, shitting yourself, puking yourself. It can last anywhere from 8 to 12 to 16 hours. It does kind of, you wake up and you can tell you've been through a battle, and that's where you typically hear the conversation of you met Mother Ayahuasca, or you got led through your own kind of like Akashic record journey, and you've kind of put everything together. And I've done ayahuasca dozens of times, and it is very intense and very profound, and it is almost kind of like you're getting your hand held and walked through this whatever universal schooling of all this deep shit. When you smoke DMT, it's different. It's really like you're lighting up your brain to increase your antenna, and you're being blasted into this space, and now you're able to you're popped into this area. And if you're lucky to have interactions with entities, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's, both are getting you to an elevated alternate vibratory hum, but one is more personal and guided, and you're there to kind of meet somebody, where the other one is more just kind of like, hey, I'm here, and you're walking into a party. But
What
both
are
can have transformative, effects, because both of them force you to you can't lie in those spaces. You have to be authentic and raw. And that's where doing the shadow work, and running from your demons, and putting trauma into perspective, and all of the rattling and chatter that goes on in all of our brains. Uh, a lot of times people find peace through that ayahuasca session, because through an 8, 9, 10, 12 hour walk with your maker, so to speak, walking through all of your past shit, you're kind of forced to put it into a place that uh, you can't run from. And that's where it can be jarring for sure, but it can be extremely therapeutic as well.
I know last time we talked, you mentioned how DMT has affected your life. And by the way, I know we're we're closing in on 2 hours, man. I'm gonna let you go, I promise. But I do just kind of want to ask probably one more question for of you. What are some of the common sights and sounds or experiences? You keep mentioning a hum. I heard you mention it earlier. Is that part of the experience? Is there always like a hum or some kind of a noise that when you go into the DMT space?
Yeah, there's a palpable, visceral, energetic vibration that goes through your body, and you feel it through every cell. So, the normal, and not that there's any normal DMT experience, but there are some kind of set protocols, or set experiences maybe. Um, that first hit, or as soon as you start ingesting it, yeah, there's an instant vibratory electric hum that kind of surrounds you, in addition to the actual shaking and feeling that you go through. But yeah, there is in my opinion, well, in my experience, an audible sound and sensation. There's typically a nasal cavity kind of feeling, where once you start getting pretty deep, you have this sensation in the back of your throat, and like I said, kind of top of your nasal cavity that seems to open up. That's a physical sensation. But then, as far as the sights and sounds, it's tough to describe. And I wrote a book trying to use colorful language to try to make it exciting to read, but it's really something that it is really, really tough to describe. The best way for me to say it is sight wise. If you can look at Alex Gray type paintings, or his contemporaries that make some really cool AI stuff, it's highly complex, highly organized, but dynamic in movement, and it's a very distinct non-three-dimensional look or shape. And that's where I don't know enough about physics to really describe it, but there's just such this precise but chaotic movement that's very crisp and clear, and every edge is so just defined, and everything is intentional, even though there's so much chaos and so much movement going on. And then as far as the physiological and physical sensations, that's probably one of the most unique and different from other psychedelics, is that I feel as though you really feel every cell, every synapse. You feel all of the blood in your body. When you take a breath, you feel the oxygen, absorbing into your cells. You just have such a connection to your actual physical body, but at the same time, you're separating this kind of energetic astral body to go beyond it. It's this really kind of complex feeling. And through all of that, though, I would say and to tie into maybe one of your original questions about how it's different from other psychedelics, uh, the big kind of take home word when talking about it typically is brought up is endogenous, and that means naturally producing your own body. And that's something that I felt, well, and I talk about all the time, is that as crazy as these sensations feel, the fact that it is endogenous, it is natural, it is not is naturally metabolized in your own body. It feels very, very um, not scary. It's not like you're being poisoned and your senses are being all fucked up and messed up. Just the opposite. It feels like you have excessive clarity, that the veil's being removed, that you have now, instead of 5 human senses at a dull level, you've got 100 senses, and they're all dialed up to a maximum. And that's where that experience, or the common story of more real than real, and people are coming out of these experiences knowing without a question of a doubt that the experience did happen and it's real, because you don't have if you any say an example, a 7-minute experience in your normal walking state, you're gonna pull in 100 data points. A 7-minute experience in a DMT experience, you're gonna have a million data points. So just the amount of information that can be brought into your experience makes it very difficult to say that that didn't happen or that it's not real. If anything, that's the experience when you come back to the normal dumbed down human state where you're like, is this real? Because there's so much lacking from it. There's so much less information. There's so much less contact. There's so much, and you know, practical take home for me being dialed up in this DMT space all of the time. Some of the basic things that you're able to take back, like even just listening to music, the same songs that I've listened for 20 years of my life, now that I listen to with these new like DMT airs, and I'm hearing so much more in the background, all of the dings and the beats and the little whistles and the lyrics actually mean something now, or uh it, name it to your favorite food, you would taste the top 3 flavor profiles, but now you're tasting something and you can taste 15 layers of herbs just in the sauce of it, and it's like it's that type of refined human senses that you're able to tap into. And that's a kind of beautiful thing about psychedelics too, is that once you realize just how elevated your body can be and just how much input and how much uh truly how it can run fully properly and close to optimal, you can't unsee that or unfeel that. And that's how I kind of walk through this life now with this extra kind of pep in my step, is because I felt how beautiful and how awesome my body can run and operate and hum and do all of those things. And I take that back into my everyday, where I don't need to constantly blast off into DMT to feel that elation. I can bring it right here in my everyday. So
When you guys were talking about the vibration or the code that you guys were seeing in the laser, and you were saying how I believe it was you said it was like smudgy. Is that correct? Like you like kind of blurry a little bit.
I
The
think he was
code.
talking about the smudge on. I didn't say the smudge. That was him.
Oh, it was him. Okay. Well, it just made me think that, like, maybe the code, and it's always something different, I believe he was saying, that maybe the code is just a vibration, like a vibrational state that you can, and it's showing him or you guys that you can change that vibration anytime you want. You are the writer of that code, right?
Yeah, well, I think like any device that's picking up a frequency of vibration or any, yeah, I think that's what you're kind of alluding to, is that we're able to resonate and interact with these codes or this message because we're somehow at that same level, and more refined or more, yeah, just more sensitive to it.
Well, I just feel like it what with what you guys were describing, it just felt like to me that it was it is something that can be changed. Because you were describing a different kind of code, right? I mean, everybody sees code, but it's always looks a little different. Is that what you guys were saying?
No, I think maybe just the opposite, that the code, well, so that there's all that normal distinct movement in the laser is going to be, I think, subjective to everybody, and is going to kind of describe it in its own swirly pattern ways. The code that I think that we're seeing, like, and once again, once you see it, it's very obvious. Oh, like that's it. Now, how I would interpret that or use words would be different and obviously subjective from somebody else. But I think what we're seeing is the same thing, and I think that's where that shock and awe is, kind of where everybody's saying, "Oh shit, yeah, what is that?" Because it's very hard to describe. And
And
even
is it
through just a 2-hour conversation and hours and hours of his program, there
yeah.
still isn't a clear distinction of or description of what is it, what's the code, how is it. But that's why I really wanted to my take home message of this is, if anybody really is trying to see what we're talking about, is the very, very distinct, clear patterning of that cascading columns of movement, or that was very, it was set in its shape and movement, where everything else is fluid and dynamic and kind of moving in its own swirly matrix, where this was separate and stamped at a different, I don't know, just a,
It's just hard to describe
it's in
'cause
a different space, but it's so uniform and so, yeah,
It's not binary code, it's not ones and zeros, or it kinda is?
So how I described it, like, is it almost like if you could consider like Tetris. Like, think about like those Tetris blocks falling. So each one of those Tetris blocks is its own cube or pixel, and that's how I saw columns of these stacked pixels. But then as each pixel was the symbol or shape, and as the symbols and shapes kind of cascaded down, the each column, whatever symbol was in the next parallel column, depending on the shape, would then make its own different shape because some of the like lines would match up. And that's where you had, like I said, all these cascading rain codes happening. But then as those switched and changed, it also made a horizontal code. But the fact that that was at a very distinct 90-degree angle, and it was really in its own lane, where typically everything else in that DMT space is fluid, dynamic. There are no real boundaries, and it's well, I shouldn't say there's no real boundaries, but there's no rigidity where the code was very rigid, and maybe that's kind of the best way to describe it. There's so much fluid, dynamic movement in that DMT space, and in the laser, just looking at it. Even if you were to, if you were to take a hit of weed or a cigarette or cigar smoke and then blow a laser through it, you'll see all of that swirling movement, crazy shit. And that's always there, but there's no rigidity to that. There's so much fluid, dynamic movement. The code is very rigid in its own space, and clearly symbols that are cascading and switching. So that was with all the crazy shit that I saw in my hundreds of times of DMT space. That was the first time I saw something that seemed like it actually had some rigidity to it. Which in itself probably, and maybe that's the best way to describe it. That is the main oddity of it. So there's so much fluid dynamic movement in laser and DMT space, but yet somehow, some way, this code is its own thing that doesn't have those same physics, and that's the
Interesting.
weird part of it.
Well, I'm
And
sure
it's within different layers of, like, even in that laser, there's whatever. Say there's 20 levels or 20 layers of that laser pie or cake that you need to get through to find, say, layer 16 is where the actual code is. So you're looking through all of these kind of different layers of that, but once you find that layer 16 or whatever, wherever that actual code is, it's such a clear distinction from all the other layers of the cake, and that's what kind of blew my mind.
it's just interesting, man, that, like, why can't we see that all the time? Like, if it's like it just brings up more questions, I guess, than we have answers for, right? Because
Well, yeah, but that's the like Aldous Huxley's doors of perception, and the reducing valve, and I think we talked about this last time. Where dude, listen, me calling you, but
that's
think
fine.
about how much energy and information is around us, from gamma rays to X-ray
Right.
rays to, we're only picking up such a small percent of the electromagnetic spectrum, let alone all the other energetic spectrums out there. So to say that, uh, you know, that we're not seeing it all the time, or why can't we see it all the time? I think we're saturated by countless types of information and energies and vibrations that we're not able to dial in our receiver to pick up, and that's for survival. Otherwise we'd be going nuts with everything bombarding us. uh and then that's where I think where the DMT comes in, is that it it resonates us or gets us to vibrate at that fine level where, yeah, we can see this weird thing into a laser. And that's where I applaud Danny for even putting those two things together. Like, what the fuck? What type of guys, getting high on DMT, getting messages from the universe to get lasers and look at them, and yet here we are. And I think that's anybody that's kind of shitting on his, or some of the pushback, is that who is he to say that he found this code of reality, or kind of like, um, kind of brushing it off like it's not something major, when it is. Now, what it is and what that means can be disputed, but to say that you're finding this weird thing that sticks out, I agree that it has the profundity that he says it does, and that it should be explored. And I'm glad that it's getting some people hopping on it now that can, bring some credibility to it from the scientific standpoint, as well as hopefully I'm adding some kind of street cred too, where, like I said, I'm not gonna lie for anybody, or fabricate anything for anybody, where I can say that, yeah, my first runs with this experiment, I saw it, and I'm gonna keep doing it because I think there's more there to be found.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we live in this 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? We're living in this little tiny sliver of light in the electromagnetic spectrum, and it just makes it feel like this must be a special place. if we're in this place, right? And so
And that's really the beautiful take home, right? So to start the podcast with love, connection, and what does this all mean? I think, yeah, to maybe end it on that note, we're really, really special. Now, how if you want to put that in the context of where part of a God or Jesus or Allah or Buddha or whatever name you want to put it, or if you're just into esoteric wisdom and knowledge and you think you're connected to Hermes and Thoth or whatever, all of those are true. And to your point, we are special. And the fact that we're here right now for this short little blip of time that we have in our lifetime to appreciate, again, the lesson that I learned on that day with DMT, to appreciate every millisecond of the time that we have, that we're in this special, beautiful, physical human body, to 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 pick up just that small percentage, because there's some real beauty in that small percentage. And yeah, I appreciate every second I have in this body with its limitations, because this particular screen with its limitations allows me to enjoy some of the most beautiful things I think this universe has to offer. And not that I know the galactic, what it's like to be all these different aliens, but to be a human, to feel love, to express love, to kiss a baby, to eat ice cream, to make love, to see the sunset. All these things are, I like having this human filter. I like exploring elevated states beyond it. But man, I to the point of why we're here and why we're still, why we're doing the podcast, writing the books and everything, is to share our story, that we're special. We're all special. And to see that in ourselves and others is, I think, the purpose of being a human. And once you do that, life just becomes fucking awesome to live, which again is the point of all this, which is you don't have to be miserable, depressed, anxious, suicidal, alcoholic, drugged up, or like, there's a better way. And once you see it, once you become awakened, and however you word that or you get there, it's a beautiful place to be. And then you want to do what you're doing, which is share it with people. So again, I applaud you for doing it.
I think that you were put through things in your life to be able to do this, to be able to experience that, to be able to talk about those things, to be able to do DMT, so you can come on podcasts and communicate with everyone because you're an excellent communicator. And I think it's the same for me, man. I can't describe some of the things I've done in my life where I have done things that people would never be able to dream of. I've been to the pyramids, I've been to the Colosseums, I've traveled a lot of places, I've seen a lot of things, I've done a lot of things, and so, but I just feel like now looking back, I didn't appreciate my time doing that. I was just like, because I was in the military at the time, I was like, oh, it was a job. But now I realize I was supposed to see all those things. I was supposed to do all those things so I can share those experiences on this podcast. And so I'm sure you're not exactly thrilled with the path that you took, but it made you who you are, and you're here today sharing your testimony with this stuff. And I think is excellent, man. I think this is what we're supposed to do. I don't even know how to describe that, but I'll leave it at that, man. I just feel like
Yeah.
it's a mission for us almost now, because we were put on those certain paths so we could help other people in some way. So
Yeah, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And now, there's a balance to be had where, and money isn't the enemy, or material things aren't the enemy, or I mentioned my battle with alcohol. Alcohol is not the enemy. It's all your relationship to it. So, yeah, I I'd like to think that there's a balance that can happen now with my life where I can keep sharing my message, but I know that it's so easy to know when you're aligned with your purpose and your message and when you're not. It's so easy to know when you get goosebumps and that you're in the right direction, or when you get that pit in your stomach where you're like, "Oh, this is not the direction I should be going." And you just keep following the goosebumps and your natural path. And I have found now, several years into this journey, that everything just comes to you. So those beautiful synchronicities about music and riding down the highway, but also the warm meals, the warm showers. In my case, I've had friends hand me thousands of dollars. I've lived in houses now for free without, like, everything just comes when you're aligned to it. Where the other way, everything, all the shit just kind of falls away and crumbles apart. But it takes some balls to sit there in that quiet space, to not push your own ego, to say, I need this, I demand this. No, just to, now that doesn't mean don't be driven and don't have goals. And certainly, you got to take responsibility for the direction of your life. but there is a sense of just kind of submitting to the powers to be, to know that if you're aligned with your purpose, and it can't just be to make money or to have things. And that's what I needed at 40 years old, to kind of step away from it, was just to be like, yeah, it's not about keeping up with the Joneses and making more and more and more and more and more. Where, yeah, I'm so happy that I'm on this path now, because I still feel like I can have that wealth and the financial success, and I'm very comfortable that that will come again. But now it's going to be with all for the right reasons, and shared in all the right ways, and used to enrich me and many, many people's lives, as opposed to just add more shit on paper like I did before. So, yeah, I'm very, very happy with the dark shit that I walked through, because now I can shine that more bright of a light. So,
Dude, and speaking of shining that light, I'm telling you, you had this
yeah,
glow around you
that
earlier,
was
dude. I'm
awesome.
telling you.
That's,
For real, yeah, I was like, "Well, this is kinda weird." It was like
on
this
on
white I
another.
don't know if anybody else will be able to see it, but I will put the
S it
video out, by
it
the way.
almost seems like every podcast interview that I do, there's some weird happening with energy, with light, with movement, with the sun, where I'll talk about some things, yeah, so that, I don't I'm curious to see how it pans out on the video, because
Yeah,
that's not the
for sure.
first time that weird shit like that's happened. But
Really, yeah.
no, and it's no weirder than the shit we just discussed. So I'd like to think that there are energy or spirits or things around both of us that are giving us those goosebumps that we just talked about. And man, I welcome them. Like, when we get off the recording right now, I'm gonna say thanks to those energies, and enjoy the rest of my Saturday night, knowing how lucky I
Dude,
really am.
I'm so sorry to keep you so late, man. Do you wanna go
Oh, I love these conversations.
I
I'm
do
really
too, man.
grateful that Danny came on, because I know
Yeah,
he's
me
got a
too.
lot of shit going on, and I'm glad he was able to speak it from his mouth, that I could you know, add to
Color
his story,
commentary?
as
Yeah.
opposed to speak to, for him.
Yeah, yeah. Just add that color commentary like in baseball, right? There's the
Yeah, no, it's perfect.
yeah, you're the baseball pitcher that can give here's how the pitches should go, and then you got the commentator commentating
Don't take
and
too
trying
bit of
to
a hit. You'll
yeah,
fucking
yeah. So, do you wanna go ahead and, plug anything before we leave, man?
I I plug the message, share love, share hope. I appreciate what you're doing. I think if you brought me on because of my book, Butler's DMT Field Guide. If anybody wants to support my work, I happily would love if people buy it. But I think I said this at the end of your other book too. I offer it to free for anybody that listens to any of the podcasts that I come on. If anybody wants a free PDF copy, my email is booksbyadambutler@gmail.com. I'll happily send you a free copy. And then probably also too, if anybody has any questions about DMT, laser, mental health, suicide, any of that type of shit. I open up my email for personal interactions, and I can say, so when you say what can I ask for? The most rewarding thing that's happened out of this whole exploration of my book and podcast is the interaction from people sharing their stories back with me, and uh, that's been something that I could have never have imagined. So, and maybe to your point about why do this, and are you on the right path? I've when I wrote that book, I could have only have dreamed that I would have had one, two, maybe dozens of people say that your words really helped. Now I can say I've had that times, dozens and dozens and dozens of phone calls, emails, texts, personal conversations, Zoom meetings with people where I can say I've helped them. And that's not an ego thing, and that's not me patting myself on the back. That's just saying I know my words help somebody in a really dark spot get out of it. And now I gave them the confidence to share it. And that's why I keep doing these. And I hope that you'll keep doing it too, because I know that these words will latch on somebody that needs it. So that's the
Yeah.
message.
Great way to close it out, man, and, thank you for the PDF that you sent me for the last episode we did together. I'm actually gonna buy a copy because I wanna support what you're doing, man, and, I'm sorry I didn't buy one last time, I meant to,
Oh, no
but I
worries.
will, and I encourage everybody, please, it's a great book, man, it really is, so, and you can find that on Amazon, I'm assuming all
Yep.
the platforms you can buy books, and you can also find him go follow his channel, right? Go to YouTube, he's got a great new podcast where he's talking a lot about this stuff. You're becoming one of the experts in all this stuff, dude. So that's a great
Yeah.
feeling. I'm sure it's a great feeling for you to have, right? It's like you're that
Position I
guy.
never thought I would be in. It's really like, even, but it's kind of funny, but I do landscaping, and it's a seasonal gig. So, we've been off now for a little over 3.5 months, and it's now regrouping with the crew. And it's so much has happened in my life over the past 3 or 4 months that it's crazy to kind of think about all this shit that's panning out. But I'm along for the ride, and as long as I stay humble and stay authentic and raw with the desire to help, I think I'll be all right. So, and thank you for when I was first kind of getting into this stuff, thank you for having me on. You were one of the people that gave me one of my voices, so thank you.
Dude, the show keeps growing, and I don't never really understand it, but people are listening, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you guys very much for listening. You mentioned Code of Reality. Is that codeofreality.com? Is that where people can support his book? Do you know? I mean, his movie, his documentary.
Yep, and that
Okay.
goes over all the specs, the lasers, and that's probably the best way to stay informed about anything. And I can say this too, he's very accessible, and he encourages people. He has live talks almost every night where you can live chat if you have questions, and he will. I don't want to speak for him, but I know he answers majority of his emails, and anybody that I've ever spoken with that's reached out to him, he's gotten right back to. So he is accessible if you have personal questions.
Well, Adam, thank you very much for setting this up, man. I really appreciate it, brother. And like I said, I think I said it last time. If I didn't, I'm proud of you. And keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
All right, man. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Well, I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. Can you point me in the right direction? God send me your blessing. I'm so tired of stressing. This music's turned to obsession. I got a long way to go to ease my pain. My clothes soaking wet, mixed with sweat and the rain. Going half insane. Wishing I could change all my mistakes, but y'all be half gone if all y'all had seen the things that I saw. Hallucinating from the alcohol, hoping I can stop my own fall. Gotta stand tall, overcome the sin. Walking down the dirt road, singing church hymns. Oh dear Lord, oh dear Lord. Well, I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. I'm sitting back thinking about the memories. Now I don't know who's a friend to me. These people act like they can to me. Well, that's still a mystery. Devil wants me to lose my religion, but I won't stop, not without a fight. I won't give it. So I'm gonna sit down right here and pray, and ask the Lord above to help me change my way. Today the world's filled with greed, envy, and hate. You're moving too fast, apply pressure to the brain.